Chapter 1266. Yichen was still in the beginner's area of the Three Kingdoms because he wanted to obtain all the luck of heaven and earth of the Great Han Empire and then ascend to the untainted world. In order to complete this plan and prevent any deviation, Yichen made some arrangements after the end of the World War. He made all the natives of the Great Han Empire, except for the reincarnation Immortal City, believe that Yi Chun, the Prince of Han, had really returned to his sect and was punished by the Immortals, which led to the destruction of the reincarnation city. In this way, Dong Zhuo, Yuan Shao, Cao Cao, and the other vassals would reignite their ambitions and would no longer cower in fear of the Prince of Han and not dare to rebel. According to Yi Chen's calculation, whether it was Dong Zhuo's rebellion, the vassals seeking Dong Zhuo, or the vassal struggle for hegemony, they would all develop according to the established trajectory. After all, Yi Chen did not kill Dong Zhuo, Cao Cao, Yuan Shao, Lu Bian, Lu Xie, Empress He, and other key figures. But now, the original course of history had deviated. F***CK, before Lu Bian was forced to abdicate, he was burned to death by the fire. If this continued, how many changes would there be in the history of the Great Han Empire? Even Yi Chen could not predict. If the vassal struggle for hegemony was still going to start, it would not affect Yi Chen's plan to send troops to conquer the world after the vassal struggle for hegemony started. If the vassal struggle for hegemony could not start because of the current deviation, then Yi Chen's plan would be ruined. Yi Chen did not want to see such a situation. Otherwise, Yi Chen would not have come to the imperial palace of Luoyang directly after noticing this, nor would he be angry because of this. Glancing at the burning corpses of Lu Bian and the young empress, Yi Chen moved his divine sense and covered the entire imperial palace in an instant. In the next second, Yi Chen's face darkened as he looked towards the direction of Empress He's palace. Mother ***, if He Lien doesn't sleep with anyone for a year, she will lose her mind due to the backlash of the divergent ability and become a promiscuous lunatic. I know this, but why the hell did she have to call my name? Empress He was the sister of the real Empress He. Her name was He Lien. She had a special technique that could confuse others and make them fall into an illusion that they thought was real. It was precisely because He Lien possessed this special ability that she was able to preserve her virginity until now. Of course, all of this was told to Yi Chen by Empress He Lien in order to seek help from Yi Chen. Otherwise, Yi Chen would still be in the dark about this secret. However, this wasn't important. What was important was that He Lien, who was in a state of backlash, was muttering Yi Chen's name. This made Yi Chen's balls ache. If it was any other man who called his name when he was being raped, he might feel proud. However, Yi Chen wouldn't. Even if it was Empress He, who was second only to one person and above everyone else, it was the same. As for the reason, it was very simple. Yi Chen didn't lack women, and he didn't care about Empress He. Otherwise, when Empress He visited Yi Chen in the middle of the night and wanted to give herself to him, Yi Chen would have directly taken her. He wouldn't have waited until now. This didn't mean that Empress He wasn't attractive. To be able to become an empress, her appearance naturally wouldn't be bad. However, the problem was that Empress He was too good at scheming. Moreover, she was extremely shrewd. Yi Chen didn't want to be the kind of person who only cared about enjoying himself and got himself into trouble for no reason. For Yi Chen, if a woman was beautiful and had a good figure, he would consider keeping her in his backyard. However, the premise was that this woman was worth it and wouldn't cause any unnecessary trouble. For example, his backyard would be on fire. As for Empress He Lien, she was the kind of woman who would cause his backyard to be on fire. Yi Chen wasn't interested in keeping such a woman. Just when Yi Chen's face was gloomy and he was about to explore other places to find out the reason for the deviation in the history of the Great Han Dynasty, the fat Dong Zhuo suddenly changed his direction and went straight to the main hall where Empress He lived. Yi Chen, who used his divine sense to explore this point, immediately frowned. At this moment, Li Ru's voice suddenly sounded. "Father-in-law, for safety's sake, it's better to let someone else explore the way to avoid any mistakes." Dong Zhuo, who was striding forward, suddenly stopped when he heard this. He then turned to look at Li Ru and asked in a deep voice, Li Ru, didn't you say that Yi Yu of Gojoseon wasn't in the palace? After hearing Dongzhi was scolding, Li Ru hurriedly bowed and said, Father-in-law, Ru has confirmed that Yi Yu of Gojoseon isn't in the palace. However, since someone could sneak into the palace under the encirclement of the Shiliang cavalry and brazenly enter Empress He's palace, it must be someone with great martial art skills. Father-in-law, if you go in rashly, I'm afraid it will be dangerous. Dongzhi nodded when he heard this. Then he looked at the two guards and said, Okay, you two go over first and find out what's going on. Remember, you're not allowed to look at Empress He. I will skin anyone who dares to peek. Yes, my lord. Hearing this, the two guards who were called by Dongzhi hurriedly bowed. After that, they walked towards Empress He's palace. In the sky, Yi Chun, who had released his divine sense, saw this and his face instantly darkened. Mother of asterisk her, it can't be, because of that be asterisk tch, He Lien, that this deviation occurred. Damn it, it must be her. If I'm not wrong, this woman must have mentioned my name and scared Fatty Dongzhi. As a result, Fatty Dongzhi flew into a rage out of humiliation and went to take revenge on Liu Bian. He accidentally killed Liu Bian and the little empress. Damn it, no matter how I thought about it. I didn't think of this. I can't let He Lien stay here any longer. Otherwise, I don't know what kind of trouble she will cause thinking of this. Yi Chun looked at Empress He, who was still carelessly touching him in the palace. Then he raised his right hand and a suction force appeared in the air. With a bang sound, Empress He locked the roof of the palace and instantly flew into the sky. After that, Empress He, who was barely wearing any clothes, followed closely behind. In the blink of an eye, she arrived next to Yi Chun. If it was a normal person who was suddenly pulled into the sky by a mysterious force, they would definitely scream and scream. However, Empress He didn't. Because she was suffering from the backlash of the special technique, she had lost her mind. When Empress He arrived in front of Yi Chun and saw Yi Chun, Empress He's eyes suddenly lit up with an incomparably hot gaze. Yi Chun, love me, love me. As soon as she screamed, Empress He threw herself into Yi Chun's arms and started to kiss Yi Chun. Yi Chun, who was sneakily attacked by Empress He a few times, saw this and his face darkened. Damn it, I was actually taken advantage of by a bitch who didn't have much cultivation. Thinking of this, Yi Chun used his mind to imprison He Lien on the spot. Chapter 1267. Yi Chun didn't want to be taken advantage of by He Lien again. Even if it was a surprise or what others wanted, Yi Chun didn't want that. After all, Yi Chun did not have any special feelings toward He Lien. Even though He Lien was currently naked and completely exposed to Yi Chun and was within his reach, it was still the same. Yi Chun took a glance at He Lien, whose eyes were still emitting a fiery gaze even though she was imprisoned. Yi Chun raised his left hand and pointed at Empress He's palace. With a buzzing sound, a fireball appeared in a flash and flew straight towards Empress He's palace. Boom! Empress He's palace was instantly set ablaze. Then it started burning intensely. Dongzhi and his men were walking toward Empress He's palace. They were stunned when they saw the palace on fire. In the next second, Dongzhi shouted, What's going on? Why is Empress He's palace on fire? Father-in-law, I think the culprit wants to burn Empress He to death and frame you. Li Ru looked at Empress He's palace, which was burning fiercely, and bowed. Dongzhi opened his eyes wide and shouted, Who dares to do this? Who dares to frame me? In the sky, Yi Chun curled his lips in disdain when he heard Dongzhi's words. This damn fatty's ability to shout, Stop the thief, was really not small. Others might not know how Liu Bian and the young empress died, but Yi Chun knew it very well. Otherwise, Yi Chun wouldn't think so. On the ground, Li Ru was silent for a while when he heard Dongzhi's angry words. Then he bowed and said, Father-in-law, if I'm not wrong, it must be one of the big families in the city who did this. Among them, the most likely one is the Yuan family. Are you saying that Yuan Shao, that son of a B****, framed me because of my negligence? Most likely. Hearing this, Li Ru nodded his head and said. Dongzhi's face darkened when he heard this. Clearly, Dongjua didn't want to hear Li Ru's answer. After a brief moment of silence, Dongjua raised his head and looked at Li Ru. Pass down the order. Exterminate the Yuan clan. Leave no one alive. Also, hang Yuan Kuang at the city gate and leave his corpse there for 3 days. Father-in-law, you can't. Li Ru was stunned when he heard this, and then hurriedly bowed. Dongjua's face darkened when he heard this, and then he shouted angrily, "Why not? Father-in-law, the Yuan clan is a prestigious clan. If father-in-law wants to smoothly take over the great Han dynasty, not only must you not exterminate the Yuan clan, you must also express goodwill and appease the Yuan clan. Otherwise, all the landowning clans in the world will definitely unite to resist father-in-law." When Li Ru heard this, his body suddenly stiffened, and then he hurriedly bowed and said. When Dongjua heard this, he snorted coldly and shouted, "What a joke! My Shiliang Iron Cavalry is all brave and skilled in battle." In the past, I would have been afraid of the gentry, but now I have nothing to fear. Li Ru panicked upon hearing this. He turned to Dongjua and bowed. "Master, although our Shiliang cavalry is brave and skilled in battle, there are many soldiers in the hands of the nobles. If the nobles join forces, even if our Shiliang cavalry is unstoppable, we will suffer heavy losses. Ru, I implore my lord to reconsider. I have made up my mind." Dongjua's eyes widened when he heard Li Ru call him master instead of father-in-law. After saying this, he turned to the guard at the side and shouted, "Pass down the order! Pass down the order! Exterminate the Yuan clan. Leave no one alive." "Yes, master." The guard's expression turned solemn when he heard Dongjua's order, and then he bowed and loudly bowed. When Li Ru saw this, his body involuntarily swayed. At this moment, Dongjua coldly said, "Li Ru, you must be tired. Go back and rest. I will give you a month's leave." "Master." Li Ru paled when he heard this. Unfortunately, Dongjua turned and left before he could finish speaking. Li Ru clenched his teeth as he watched Dongjua leave, and then he bowed to Dongjua's back. "Father-in-law, Ru will wholeheartedly assist father-in-law. Whether father-in-law believes it or not, Ru will never betray father-in-law." Dongjua, who was angrily leaving, immediately stopped. At this moment, Li Ru bowed again. "Father-in-law, if you insist on exterminating the Yuan clan, you must have second Prince Lu Xie ascend the throne tomorrow. Then you must issue a decree to appoint the landowning clans that are hostile to each other to serve in each other's territories. Only then will the landowning clans fall into chaos, and father-in-law will emerge victorious from the chaos." As soon as Li Ru finished speaking, Dongjua's eyes widened. He turned around and looked at Li Ru. "Come with me." "Yes, father-in-law." Li Ru was slightly stunned when he heard this, and then he hurriedly bowed. After that, he followed Dongjua forward. In the sky, Yi Chun, who had spread out his divine sense and heard the conversation between Dongjua and Li Ru, couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. F***CK, I really didn't guess wrong. Empress He Lian was the key to the deviation of the Great Han's history. If he hadn't dragged this woman out and burned down her palace, the history of the Great Han dynasty would have changed greatly because of this woman. Dongjua's massacre of the Yuan clan and Lu Xie's ascension to the throne were the preludes to the Great Han's history. Now that this scene was about to begin, and everything would return to normal, Yi Chun was naturally relieved. Speaking of which, why hadn't the system issued a quest for the Dongjua rebellion in this life? In Yi Chun's previous life, a large number of quests had appeared when the Dongjua rebellion started. Players could accept quests from Dongjua or the various aristocratic clans. Although the rewards weren't great, they weren't small either. Now that the Dongjua rebellion had started, the system hadn't issued any quests. How could Yi Chun not find it strange? F***CK. Could it be that the Heavenly Tao in the newbie area doesn't want you to take all the quests and reap the rewards, so it's deliberately not issuing any quests? F***CK. That might really be the case. Thinking of this, Yi Chun's mouth couldn't help but twitch. He then looked at Empress He Lian, who was imprisoned beside him. He Lian couldn't fall into Dong Zhuo's hands, nor could she fall into the hands of the other aristocratic clans. At least not before the Great Han struggle for hegemony began. Otherwise, the course of history of the Great Han dynasty might have changed. But I can't kill He Lian. He Lian could die, but she couldn't die in Yi Chen's hands. Otherwise, the history of the Great Han Empire would also be affected. At first glance, it seemed a little ridiculous. Lu Hong was dead, the Dong Zhuo rebellion had started, and the Great Han struggle for hegemony had begun. How could the history of the Great Han Empire be affected because of He Lian's death? However, that was indeed the truth. Because as long as Yi Chen dared to kill He Lian, all the natives of the Great Han Empire would definitely receive the news, no matter how secretive Yi Chen was. Because the system would notify all the natives of the Great Han Empire. This way, Yi Chen would be labeled as a traitor. Yi Chen didn't want to see such an outcome. Otherwise, how could Yi Chen release He Lian and live until now? This woman was truly a hot potato. He couldn't kill her. He couldn't release her either. Just as Yi Chen thought of this, He Lian, who was imprisoned in the air, suddenly started to turn red. Then, he saw a mist rising from her body. When Yi Chen noticed this, he immediately frowned. The backlash from He Lian's special technique was no different from a firewood that had been poisoned by the flood dragon. Thinking of this, Yi Chen grabbed He Lian's neck with his right hand and then took a step forward, instantly disappearing from sight. Outside Luoyang City, at the top of a barren mountain, space suddenly distorted. Then, Yi Chen appeared, carrying He Lian, whose body was turning redder and redder, and whose eyes were becoming crazier and crazier. Chapter 1268. Yi Chen glanced at He Lian, who was on the verge of breaking down and losing herself. He thought for a moment, and then placed He Lian on the ground. In the next second, Yi Chen raised his right hand and pointed at He Lian's forehead. With a buzzing sound, a gust of spiritual qi of heaven and earth appeared and flew straight into He Lian's forehead. A few seconds later, He Lian's body turned red and the burning sensation in her eyes finally subsided. Sensing this, Yi Chen nodded in satisfaction. Then, he grabbed at the air with his right hand, and a large amount of spiritual qi of heaven and earth was instantly grabbed by Yi Chen. Then, Yi Chen poured the spiritual qi into He Lian's body. What Yi Chen was doing now was naturally to remove the backlash from He Lian's special technique. Otherwise, if He Lian died now, it would be the same as if she was killed by Yi Chen. Yi Chen did not want to see such a situation. As the large amount of spiritual qi of heaven and earth poured into He Lian's body, her body quickly returned to normal. Then, He Lian's eyes gradually regained their vigor. A few seconds later, He Lian involuntarily let out a cry of surprise. Her hands quickly covered the important parts of her body. Although He Lian was the empress and had become the empress dowager, in the end, He Lian was still a virgin. How could she not be shocked when she suddenly realized that her clothes did not cover her body and that everything that should not be exposed was exposed? Otherwise, she would not be in such a state. After He Lian's cry of surprise, Yi Chen grabbed at the air with his right hand. A set of women's clothes was instantly pulled out of thin air by Yi Chen. Then, he threw it to He Lian, who was stunned by the sight of Yi Chen. Put it on. After Yi Chen's words, He Lian immediately came back to her senses. Then, tears fell from her eyes. Seeing He Lian's crying appearance, Yi Chen could not help but frown and ask, "Why are you crying? I didn't do anything to you." Hearing this, He Lian cried even harder. She was like a child who had been greatly wronged. When Yi Chen saw this, his face immediately darkened, and then he shouted, "Shut up. If you cry again, I'll throw you down the mountain to feed the wolves." He Lian was taken aback by Yi Chen's words. When she came back to her senses, she decided not to hide it anymore. She looked directly at Yi Chen and said, "You have beach. You've seen my naked body. Shouldn't you give me an explanation?" "Explain?" Hearing this, Yi Chen immediately frowned, then said, "If you want an explanation, I can give it to you. Dong Zhuo happened to be going to your palace when you suffered a backlash from your special ability. Is that enough?" When He Lian heard this, she was slightly taken aback. Then, she saw an extremely disappointed expression appear on her face. In the next second, Lian looked at Yi Chun and bowed with utmost sincerity. "Thank you, you of Beach, for saving me. There's no need to thank me. Lu Bian, Tang Ji has already been killed by Dong Zhuo. You can't go to the palace anymore. What are your plans for the future?" Yi Chun glanced at Lian and asked. When Lian heard this, her body involuntarily swayed a few times. Clearly, Lian was agitated by Yi Chun's news. After a few seconds, Lian finally recovered. She looked at Yi Chun and bowed. "This lowly concubine wants to be you of Beech's maidservant. Please grant you of Beech my wish. You're not suitable." Yi Chun glanced at Lian and said, "You're not suitable." When Lian heard this, she revealed an extremely miserable expression. In the next second, Lian bit her lip and said, "Lord you of Beech, this lowly concubine admits that I previously wanted to use you of Beech, but this lowly concubine is also sincere to you of Beech. Your way of thinking is too unrealistic." When Yi Chun heard this, he glanced at Lian and continued, "Since that's the case, I'll choose a path for you." When Yi Chun said this, Lian was stunned. Just when Lian didn't understand what Yi Chun meant, Yi Chun willed the ancient contract book to appear in front of Yi Chun. After glancing at the simple and heavy ancient contract book, Yi Chun looked at Lian and said, "Become my slave. Be my slave. As long as I can be by Lord you of Beech's side, Lian has no other request." When Lian heard this, she was stunned again and then bowed without hesitation. When Yi Chun heard this, he took a deep look at Lian. Then, he opened the ancient contract book. At the same time, a huge 8 trigrams formation appeared on the ground and enveloped Yi Chun and Lian. "Don't resist, or you'll be destroyed." The moment Yi Chun said this, Lian, who was originally nervous, immediately relaxed without any reservations. At this moment, 2 red pillars of light suddenly rose from the 8 trigrams formation and enveloped Yi Chun and Lian. At the same time, the sound of the great Tao rang out. A few seconds later, the strange phenomenon disappeared and the system's notification rang out. "Ding! Congratulations to player Yi Chun for successfully subduing the special historical figure, Lian." When the system's notification ended, Yi Chun immediately put away the ancient contract book and then looked at Lian and said, "From now on, you'll be an ordinary person. From now on, you can live a quiet life in this world as an ordinary person." Yi Chun couldn't kill Lian, but Lian couldn't be obtained by Dong Zhuo, Yuan Shao, Cao Cao, or the other feudal lords. Otherwise, the history of the Great Han Dynasty might change uncontrollably. This wasn't something Yi Chun wanted to see. Otherwise, Yi Chun wouldn't have told Lian this. When Yi Chun finished speaking, Lian nodded and then waved her right hand. A jade talisman instantly appeared in Lian's hand. Seeing this, Yi Chun could not help but be stunned. Yi Chun still could not figure out how Lian, who was barely clothed, could have a storage item. Moreover, she had taken out a jade slip of unknown origin. Seeing this, Lian unhesitatingly crushed the jade slip. In an instant, an incomparably enormous sealing power appeared and trapped Yi Chun in place. Yi Chun narrowed his eyes when he noticed this. "What the hell? What's going on? Why does Lian have such a powerful item?" Furthermore, she didn't suffer the backlash of a slave contract when she attacked me. Just as Yi Chun thought of this, Lian, who had just imprisoned Yi Chun, smiled miserably and said, "I'm sorry. You Lord Beech, Lian has no intention of harming you. Lian just wants to fulfill a small wish before I die." When Yi Chun heard this, he glanced at Lian and said coldly, "Lian, I don't know what your wish is, but you have to consider it carefully. Although this sealing power is strong, it won't be able to control me for long. Furthermore, you can't hurt me." When Lian heard this, she brushed her hair aside and said, "I'm a miserable woman. Everything I did before was for my elder brother, my elder sister, or my nephew. Now, this lowly concubine wants to live for herself." Chapter 1269. When Yi Chen heard this, he immediately frowned. Although Yi Chen did not know what He Lien wanted to do, Yi Chen was certain of one thing. That was, He Lien did not have the slightest hostility towards him. Otherwise, it was impossible for the God-Slayer, the grade 12 Black Lotus of Destruction, and the dark yellow Heaven-Earth Exquisite Pagoda, which had been completely refined by Yi Chen, to have no reaction. Damn it, where did this woman get such a powerful item that can even imprison me? Just as Yi Chen thought of this, He Lien, who had finished speaking and was walking towards Yi Chen, arrived in front of Yi Chen. After seriously sizing up Yi Chen for a while, He Lien directly kissed Yi Chen and did not let go. Seeing this, Yi Chen's eyes suddenly widened. Damn it, what's going on? He Lien wanted to. Just as Yi Chen thought of this, He Lien, who had fiercely kissed Yi Chen for a while, released Qin Yu and then gently put him on the ground. Damn it, I'm going to be forced by a little woman. It was no wonder that Yi Chen thought this way. No matter how one looked at it, He Lien's actions were to push Yi Chen down. Just as Yi Chen was dumbfounded, He Lien moved to untie Yi Chen's robe. Not long after, Yi Chen's clothes were piled to one side. Seeing Yi Chen being so honest with her, He Lien raised her hand to wipe the tears from the corners of her eyes. It was unknown whether they were tears of joy or pain. Then she grabbed little Yi Chen. At that instant, little Yi Chen immediately raised his banner. Then, he raised his head in incomparable fury. Seeing this, He Lien looked directly at Yi Chen and said with hidden bitterness, Lord, you have beach. You clearly have feelings for this lowly concubine. Why? After He Lien said this, she glanced at Yi Chen with hidden bitterness. Then, she sat on Yi Chen's lap. At this moment, an indescribable feeling of comfort appeared in Yi Chen's heart. When he realized this, Yi Chen's eyes widened. At the same time, a term popped up in Yi Chen's mind. His masterpiece was 8 Directions Spring Rain. F***CK. He Lien was actually one of the 10 great masterpieces. Thinking of this, Yi Chen looked strangely at He Lien, who was sitting on top of him and moving about awkwardly. He Lien, tell me who gave you that jade talisman. If you tell me, I can consider keeping you. However, your status will forever be a slave. He Lien, who was moving about unsteadily, was slightly taken aback when she heard this. Then, her eyes lit up. However, she immediately trembled. At the same time, a large amount of lake water erupted like a flash flood. Noticing this, the corners of Yi Chen's mouth couldn't help but twitch. Then he said, Tell me, who gave you that jade talisman? It's a nameless old Taoist. He told me that if I want to change my fate, I had to find my Mr. Right. Then, when He Lien heard this, she tried her best to stabilize her abnormal feeling. Then, she spoke with a trembling voice. However, before she could finish speaking, she collapsed on top of Yi Chen. Feeling wave after wave of tremors, Yi Chen let out a long sigh and said, That's right. He said, Continue. That old Taoist told me that as long as I can become the woman of my destined son of heaven, I can escape my fate and obtain eternal happiness. As He Lien said this, her body started to tremble uncontrollably again. At the same time, Yi Chen, who felt a strong suction force, felt the magic power and vital essence in his body surge uncontrollably. When he noticed this, Yi Chen's eyes widened. Son of a bitch, who was that nameless old Taoist? How could he set up this trap so early on? When he thought of this, Yi Chen hurriedly looked at He Lien and shouted, Get up! Hurry up and get up! Oh, okay. When the trembling He Lien heard this, she wanted to get up, but she suddenly realized that no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't leave Yi Chen's side. Most importantly, as He Lien exerted her strength, an even stronger stimulation assaulted her in wave after wave. Then, He Lien's eyes started to roll back. When he saw that He Lien was completely exhausted, Yi Chen's expression changed. Damn it, this He Lien's body was definitely under some kind of evil restriction. Otherwise, just as Yi Chen thought this, the great Tao immortal platform in Yi Chen's purple palace, which hadn't reacted all this time, suddenly shook. With a buzzing sound, a mysterious wave of energy erupted from Yi Chen's purple palace and spread outwards. With a crash, the power that imprisoned Yi Chun instantly shattered. At the same time, Yi Chun, who had been completely imprisoned, regained his freedom. Just as Yi Chun regained his freedom, a cloud of black smoke suddenly flew over from afar. When he saw the rapidly approaching black smoke, Yi Chun's eyes narrowed, and a cold glint flashed in his eyes. Mother of Asterisk, how dare you plot against me? I'll destroy your soul. When he thought of this, Yi Chun patted the powerless He Lian with his left hand, and she was instantly sent into his small world. In the next second, Yi Chun's mind moved, and a set of clothes instantly appeared on Yi Chun's body. The instant Yi Chun put on his clothes, the rapidly approaching black smoke instantly stopped. Then, it quickly flew into the distance. Mother of Asterisk, how dare you try to escape after plotting against me? Yi Chun shouted, and violent lightning instantly appeared on Yi Chun's right hand. At the same time, Yi Chun's right hand directly reached into the void, and then he grabbed fiercely. With a buzzing sound, Yi Chun's right hand instantly caught the rapidly escaping black smoke. In the next second, a cry of alarm rang out. It's a misunderstanding. This is a misunderstanding. Misunderstanding my asterisk SS. After Yi Chun shouted, he pulled back his right hand, and in the blink of an eye, the black smoke that had escaped hundreds of miles away was caught back. Zap, zap, small but violent lightning constantly erupted from Yi Chun's right hand. Then, the black smoke that was caught by Yi Chun turned into a slightly fat middle-aged man. Tell me, who are you? Yi Chun's words were filled with killing intent and violence. As soon as the slightly fat middle-aged man finished speaking, he endured the pain of being attacked by lightning and said, Yi Yu of Gojoseon, don't be angry. I, Tao Wu, have no hostility towards you. When Yi Chun heard this, he was slightly stunned, and then his eyes suddenly widened. Mother of Asterisk, tell me, why did you plot against me from the beginning? Tao Wu was a figure from the pre-Qin period. To be more precise, he was the lover of Zhao Ji, who was killed by Yi Chun. Of course, this was not important. What was important was that Yi Chun only wanted to confirm one thing, and that was whether Tao Wu was also reborn like him. It was no wonder that Yi Chun thought this way. After all, Tao Wu had plotted against Empress He and He Lian, and the person he targeted was Yi Chun. Moreover, he had come the right time. It would be strange if there was no problem. Chapter 1270. As soon as Yi Chun finished speaking, Tao Wu, who was grabbed by the neck by Yi Chun, hurriedly said, Yi Yu of Gojoseon, this is really a misunderstanding. I just wanted to absorb the fortune of heaven and earth through He Lian. Who would have thought that He Lian was unwilling to submit to Lu Hong at all? However, I suddenly sensed that He Lian had activated the secret technique I cast on her and started to absorb the fortune of heaven and earth, but I couldn't absorb it no matter how hard I tried. That's why I specially came over to check. When Yi Chun heard this, his eyes suddenly narrowed, and then he looked at Tao Wu and asked, What do you mean by that? Do you know such a secret technique? Yi Chun didn't sense the fortune of heaven and earth that Tao Wu mentioned at all. Of course, this wasn't important. What was important was that Yi Chun really wanted to know if Tao Wu had such a secret technique. If he did, then Yi Chun would definitely snatch it and then understand it. After all, if he could obtain such a secret technique, then others could also obtain it. If the person who obtained it was a female player who also walked the path of Emperor's fortune and met Yi Chun, but Yi Chun didn't know about it, then wouldn't it be King dangerous? As for using this secret technique to seize the fortune of heaven and earth, Yi Chun wasn't interested. After all, no matter how one looked at it, this secret technique could only be activated through sexual intercourse. And in order to do this, one would either have to use force or be willing. No matter which one it was, the same thing would happen, and that was having sexual intercourse. Yi Chun wasn't a casual person. If he had sexual intercourse, Yi Chun would accept it. How could he snatch the fortune of heaven and earth from the other party? Therefore, Yi Chun couldn't use this secret technique at all. Even if Yi Chun liked the fortune of heaven and earth, it was the same. After all, The orthodox way to seize the fortune of heaven and earth was to fight a King war and seize territory. If one won, then one would obtain everything. With this method, there was no need to resort to unorthodox methods that had unknown side effects. As soon as Yi Chen finished his words, Feng Wu cautiously glanced at Yi Chen and then said, "Don't worry. Lord, you have Beach. I obtained this by chance and verified it through Zhao Ji. If Lord Yu of Beach is interested, Bayan is willing to offer the secret technique and ask Lord Yu of Beach to spare this lowly one's life." When Yi Chen heard this, he glanced at Feng Wu and said, "Don't worry. No need. I can get it myself." After Yi Chen finished speaking, his primordial spirit moved and a huge amount of divine sense gushed out in an instant. Then it rushed towards Bayan. At the same time, Yi Chen instantly used the soul-searching secret technique. At that instant, Bayan, who was being held by Yi Chen, had a whoosh sound as his expression changed. "Spare me, Lord Yu of Beach. Bayan is willing to submit to you." As soon as Tao Wu finished speaking, the system prompt sounded. "Ding. Special character, Bayan wants to recognize you as his master. Do you accept?" "Accept my ass. Do you think I don't know who this bastard is?" Yi Chen thought disdainfully and chose to refuse without hesitation. Yi Chen liked to subdue historical figures, but even so, Yi Chen was not interested in just anyone. And, Bayan, there was an existence that Yi Chen looked down on. Damn it. If Yi Chen subdued this bastard, who knew what kind of danger he would encounter? Yi Chen did not want to be the second Qin Shi Huang. After Yi Chen made his decision, Bayan, who was begging to follow Yi Chen, suddenly had a ferocious expression on his face. At the same time, Bayan's body twisted crazily. When Yi Chen saw this, he smiled coldly and said, "You're in my hands now. You're dreaming if you think you can escape after falling into my hands." After Yi Chen finished speaking, he used his mind and an even more violent lightning instantly appeared on Yi Chen's right hand. Then, he grabbed Bayan, who was struggling to escape from Yi Chen's control, tightly in his hand. Bayan was now in a spiritual state and did not have a physical body. If Yi Chen could not catch Bayan, Bayan would naturally be able to escape from Yi Chen's control using the characteristics of a spiritual body. Of course, this was just a hypothesis. In reality, no matter how hard Bayan tried and struggled, it was useless. Even if his cultivation had reached the Purple Mansion realm, it was still the same. Bayan, who was tightly held by Yi Chen, struggled crazily but found that it was useless. His entire face was instantly filled with resentment. At this moment, Yi Chen's powerful consciousness directly rushed into Bayan's spiritual soul. When he saw Bayan's eyes, he was stunned. In the next second, an extremely mournful howl sounded from Bayan's mouth. Ouch! The howl sounded like it was weeping and complaining. It was abnormally painful. This was the result of actively resisting during the soul search. However, Yi Chen did not show any mercy. After all, Bayan was an enemy. No matter what he said, Yi Chen would not completely believe him. Time passed bit by bit. Bayan's spiritual body was constantly twisting due to the pain from his soul. His screams also became louder and louder. After the time it took to drink a cup of tea, Yi Chen, who had used the soul search on Bayan, suddenly opened his eyes. Fu *K. This Bayan is so calculative and so lucky. Unfortunately, he met me. In the memories that Yi Chen had obtained from the soul search, Bayan came out after hiding for hundreds of years. He found He Lian, who had lived an abnormally difficult life in the early stages of her life and had suffered many calamities. He taught He Lian a secret technique that had a loophole and gave He Lian a body-securing talisman. He also bewitched He Lian that if she met the right person and the right person did not like her, she could use the body-securing talisman and forcefully have sex with him. This way, He Lian could change her fate and obtain eternal happiness. Of course, this was only what Bayan told He Lian. Bayan's true goal was to absorb Lu Hong's heaven and earth fortune through He Lian. In order to achieve this goal, Momo tampered with the real Empress He when she gave birth to Lu Bian, causing the real Empress He to die in childbirth. In the end, under the request of the real Empress He, who was also her sister, Lien replaced the real Empress He and became Liu Bian's mother. Unfortunately, Bian was completely wrong about one thing. That was, Lien did not like Liu Hong at all. Therefore, Lien and Liu Hong had never slept together. Every time Liu Hong came over, Lien would use a secret technique to lead him into an illusion that seemed real but was actually an illusion. In this way, several years passed. Then, the mutants came, and Yi Chun rose to power. Bian then discovered that Yi Chun had great heaven and earth fortune. After realizing this, Bian used the dream invasion technique to guide Lien and make her view Yi Chun as the one destined for her. Originally, Bian's dream invasion technique was not that easy to succeed. However, after learning of Yi Chun's existence, Lien really fell in love with Yi Chun. Then, under the influence of Bian's dream invasion technique, she completely saw Yi Chun as the one destined for her. It was also because of this that Lien met Yi Chun in the middle of the night and wanted to give herself to Yi Chun. Of course, this was not important. What was important was that Bian did indeed have a secret technique to absorb heaven and earth fortune when they cultivated together. Furthermore, he had also schemed against Yi Chun. Who would have thought that the cultivation method they cultivated together would have such an evil side effect? Fortunately, I have the Khanate 12 bronze men of fortune and the 9 cauldrons to stabilize my fortune. I also have the evasive one to protect me. Otherwise, I might have fallen into his trap so easily. Chapter 1271. Thinking of this, Yi Chun let out a long sigh. He then looked directly at Tao Wu, whose soul was beginning to dissipate, and said, "It's your fortune to be able to absorb the heaven and earth fate from Zhao Ji and live until now. Unfortunately, you shouldn't have schemed against me." As Yi Chun said this, he opened his eyes, and the blood-red Red Lotus Hellfire appeared in Yi Chun's right hand. Tao Wu, who had not recovered from the pain of soul-searching, suddenly felt his soul tremble. At this moment, the blood-red Red Lotus Hellfire burst into flames. At the same time, a demonic blood-red lotus flower bloomed in Yi Chun's right hand. An extremely shrill scream followed closely behind. The Red Lotus Hellfire was one of the top 10 flames in the Eldritch world. It had unparalleled power. Even the existences in the Eldritch world were not willing to touch it, let alone Tao Wu. After a few breaths, Tao Wu's soul turned into nothingness and disappeared without a trace. Seeing this, Yi Chun curled his lips in disdain. Then, with a thought, the Red Lotus Hellfire disappeared. At this moment, the system notification sounded. Ding! Congratulations to player Yi Chun for successfully killing the special character, Tao Wu. You have successfully obtained all the heaven and earth fate on him. Because of his special identity, player Yi Chun is rewarded with 100 innate attribute points. When the system notification ended, Yi Chun could not help but feel stunned. Damn, I can get an extra reward after killing this Tao Wu. Tao Wu was an insignificant bug in the Pre-Qin dynasty. Although his name was recorded in history, his reputation was not good. Yi Chun thought that killing such an existence would not give him much of a reward. Who would have thought that the result would be out of Yi Chun's expectations? It actually gave Yi Chun an extra 108 attribute points as a reward. Of course, the extra innate attribute points were not much. But no matter how little, they were still innate attribute points. They were very useful. Yi Chun did not mind. Not bad, at least he got another 108 attribute points. Thinking of this, Yi Chun could not help but smirk. Then, he looked directly at Lien, who was completely stunned after being put into the small world. Yi Chun's little world was derived from the seed of the world tree. It contained all of Yi Chun's gains from the beginning of the game. All of them were priceless and of the best quality. Of course, most of the things in the small world were beyond Lien's knowledge, but that didn't stop her from judging their value. After all of these items were filled with spiritual qi, especially the supreme-grade spirit stones, high-grade spirit stones, and spiritual marrow. It was precisely because Lien had sensed the value of the treasures in the small world that she was so shocked. She knew that Yi Chun was not simple, and she also knew that Yi Chun was very strong, but she never thought that Yi Chun, who made her willing to do such crazy things, would have so many good things. Looking at the dazed He Lien in the small world, Yi Chun could not help but sigh. He Lien could not be killed, and she could not fall into the hands of other feudal lords. Otherwise, it would affect the history of the Great Han Empire. Therefore, when Yi Chun realized that He Lien had affected the history of Dong's rebellion, he had the idea of taking her as a slave and controlling her. Unfortunately, before Yi Chun could do it, He Lien had pushed it away. Of course, the process was extremely comfortable. Even Yi Chun could not deny that. It could not be helped. After all, He Lien had one of the 10 famous storms of the 8 directions. Unfortunately, this was not the result that Yi Chun wanted. Forget it. Since he had already done it, it would be unreasonable to not take her in. However, she could only be a slave. He Lien's thoughts were not pure. She had her own ideas. Otherwise, Yi Chun would definitely not have made such a decision. As for letting He Lien go, that was impossible. Yi Chun was not a man who would abandon a woman after having sex with her. Thinking of this, Yi Chun moved his mind. The naked He Lien instantly appeared in front of Yi Chun. Before Yi Chun could speak, He Lien, who had returned to her senses due to the change in scenery, threw herself into Yi Chun's arms. "Husband, don't abandon me." When Yi Chun heard He Lien's aggrieved words, the corners of his mouth twitched involuntarily. Then he said, "I won't abandon you. I won't abandon you. However, you shouldn't call me husband. At least, before you gain my absolute trust, you can't." Hearing Yi Chun's words, He Lien was first overjoyed, then stunned. She had not expected that Yi Chun really did not intend to abandon her. This outcome was a huge surprise for He Lien, who had always wanted to be by Yi Chun's side. However, what Yi Chun said afterwards was quite a blow to her. It cannot be helped. She was a woman, and she had been the empress in name for several years. To become a slave with such a status was tantamount to falling from the sky to the ground. Although He Lien could accept this outcome, she was still somewhat disappointed. In He Lien's opinion, even if she could not be Yi Chun's official wife, it was fine to be a concubine. At least, it was better than being a slave. Unfortunately, Yi Chun's words directly determined her status as a slave. After coming back to her senses, He Lien glanced at Yi Chun with an aggrieved expression. Then, she lowered her head and said softly, "Master, don't force me to leave. Master, it's fine as long as you don't chase me away. As long as Master likes it, no matter what you want me to do, I'm willing." When he heard He Lien's aggrieved words, Yi Chun could not help but frown. Then, he looked at He Lien and said, "Don't resist. I want to examine your soul. If you can pass the test, you will be a concubine in the future. If you can't, I will let you live 100 years in peace." Yi Chun's consciousness was powerful, and he also had the soul-searching secret technique. It was simply too easy for him to examine a person's soul. However, Yi Chun found it difficult to trust He Lien because of the previous conflicts between him and He Lien. Otherwise, Yi Chun would not have made the decision to make He Lien a slave. Of course, this was not important. What was important was that He Lien did not appear to be pretending at this moment. This made Yi Chun feel a headache coming on. It was precisely because of this that Yi Chun decided to examine He Lien to see if she had any ill intentions towards him. If she did, there was nothing to say. He could only turn her into a slave and raise her until she was old. He would not give her any cultivation resources and let her fend for herself. If she did not, then Yi Chun could just give He Lien the status of a concubine. After all, one night as husband and wife meant endless devotion for the rest of their lives. Moreover, He Lien had given her virginity to Yi Chun. As soon as Yi Chun said this, He Lien's eyes lit up. Then, she nodded without hesitation and said, I won't resist. Husband, feel free to examine me." Chapter 1272. Hearing those words, Yi Chun nodded. Then, with a thought, his divine awareness instantly flew toward He Lien's forehead. In the blink of an eye, it had entered He Lien's sea of consciousness. After several seconds, Yi Chun, who had finished browsing through He Lien's entire life, retrieved his divine awareness. He then looked directly at Yin and said, "In the future, your status will be that of a concubine. Remember, do not try to fight for favor. Furthermore, do not try to play any tricks." After Yi Chun had browsed through Yin's soul, there were no longer any secrets before him. It was also because of this that Yi Chun was certain that Yin's behavior was different from before. To be more exact, the current Yin did not have any bad intentions. She also did not want to fight for favor with Yi Chun's other women. She merely wanted to follow Yi Chun and enjoy Qin Yu's love. It was that simple. As for when Yin went to make peace with Yi Chun for the sake of Jin and tried to rope in Yi Chun for the sake of Lu Bian, that was something that could not be helped. After all, one was her big brother and the other was her nephew. The blood relationship between them was unbreakable. Now, Jin had been killed by Zhang Rang and Lu Bian had been killed by Dong Zhuo. Only Yin remained. Thus, Yin naturally did not have to think about these things. It could be said that before becoming Yi Chen's woman, Yin had lived her entire life with her family. However, now, Yin only wanted to pursue her own happiness and follow Yi Chun forever. This could be seen from how Yin was still thinking about Yi Chun when she was in danger. Thus, it was not that Yin could not be taken in. However, due to her status, Yi Chun could only make her a concubine. As for when he encountered Xiao and Xiao in the future, it was fine for them to act like mother and daughter. However, their relationship did not exist. After all, the Xiao and Xiao were adopted by Lu Hong in order to keep Yi Chun under control. Yi Chun would never admit that the Xiao and the Xiao were father and daughter to Lu Hong, and Yin was not the real Empress He. As soon as Yi Chun finished speaking, Yin's eyes suddenly lit up. Then, she excitedly threw herself into Yi Chen's arms and said while choking with sobs, "That's great. That's great. I've finally gotten what I wanted. All right, stop crying. I'll send you to the reincarnation immortal city now." When Yi Chen heard this, he sighed inwardly and patted Yin's back gently. When Yin heard this, she shook her head. "Husband, now is not the time." "Why?" When Yi Chen heard this, he was slightly taken aback and asked. Yin blushed when she heard Yi Chen's question. Then, she said, "Although I've become husband's woman, you haven't given me." When Yin said this, she immediately hugged Yi Chen tightly and stuck her whole body in Yi Chen's arms. She did not dare to look at Yi Chen. When he saw how embarrassed Yin was, Yi Chen could not help but smile and say, "Let's wait for a while later. Maybe in the future. Now is not the time." When Yi Chen said this, Yin suddenly froze. Obviously, Yin could not bear to be provoked by Yi Chen's words. Otherwise, Yin would not be like this. When he sensed that Yin was becoming more and more aggrieved, the corners of Yi Chen's mouth twitched, and he said, "Fine. All right, up to you, as long as you can hold on." When Yin heard this, her eyes lit up, but she was immediately taken aback. In the next second, Yin said in shock, "That's not right." "No, husband, I... When Yi Chen heard this, he could not help but smile and ask, "Are you worried that the secret technique you cultivate will have a negative effect on me?" When Yin heard this, she nodded and said in despair, "Husband, I'm afraid that I won't be able to cultivate with you. Husband, this concubine is afraid that she will never be able to... It's fine. I've already killed Tao Wu. The restriction within the secret technique he passed on to you will naturally no longer affect you. However, to be on the safe side, I'll cripple your secret technique first and then pass on another cultivation method to you." Yi Chen rubbed Yin's hair when he heard this and said. When Yin heard this, she immediately heaved a sigh of relief. Then, she hurriedly looked up at Yi Chen and said, "Thank you, husband." When Yi Chen heard this, he chuckled and nodded. Then, he lifted his left hand and gently tapped Yin's forehead. With a buzzing sound, the red lotus hellfire rushed into Yin's body along with a large amount of spiritual energy. In the blink of an eye, it destroyed all parts of Yin's body that had the secret technique imprint. At the same time, the spiritual energy that rushed into Yin's body began to nourish her body. After 10 minutes, Yin opened her eyes. She looked at Yi Chen in pleasant surprise and said, Brother Yi, I've been waiting for a long time. Husband, I can't sense the secret technique anymore. When Yichen heard this, he smiled faintly and said, if you can still sense it, then I'll quit. Husband, I'm not doubting. Hillian was shocked when she heard this and hurriedly spoke. However, before she could finish, she was interrupted by Yichen. Don't think too much. Since I've acknowledged you, I won't doubt you. Husband, when Hillian heard this, she was greatly moved. Her heart was instantly filled with emotion, and then it exploded. Ding! Congratulations to player Yichen for successfully subduing the special character, Hillian. Special reward to player Yichen. Innate attribute points, x10. Ding! Hillian's loyalty plus 10. She has advanced to loyal. When the system notification ended, Yichen was stunned. Damn, what's going on? Didn't I already subdue her? Why did the system only announce it now? Could it be that there was something wrong with my previous soul search? No, soul search can't be wrong. It should be that I treated Hillian with sincerity and made her feel strongly. That just happened to meet the requirements of subduing her. Damn, luckily everything went smoothly. Otherwise, I would have buried a mine for myself. When he thought of this, Yichen's mouth twitched involuntarily. At this moment, the world announcement sounded. Ding! Congratulations to player Yichen for successfully subduing the special character, Hillian. Special reward to player Yichen. Innate attribute points, x10. The world announcement sounded 3 times in a row. Instantly, the entire world channel exploded. Damn, who is Hillian? How did Yu of Gojoseon subdue her and get innate attribute points as a reward? She should be some hidden character. Otherwise, she would only be rewarded with gold or purple gold. It's impossible for her to get innate attribute points. Aren't you King talking nonsense? Do you think no one can tell? Now the question is, who is Hillian? I don't have any impression of her at all. The Great Han Dynasty's surname is He-Jin. Could it be that Hillian is He-Jin's relative? Damn, does it have anything to do with you? Damn, I can't even talk about it. Idiot, don't forget that the name Hillian sounds like a woman. If Yu of Gojoseon sees you guys talking about her like this and gets angry, I don't need to tell you what the consequences will be, right? Chapter 1273. The World Channel was in an uproar. Yichen glanced at it and raised his eyebrows. The World Channel announcement was good. It did not state Hillian's identity as Empress He. Otherwise, the players would talk about him in private. Yichen could not be blamed for thinking that way. After all, the players knew that Empress He was the mother of Little Qiao and Little Qiao. Although the players knew that the mother-daughter relationship was not real, they could not stop the players from talking about Yichen in private with malicious thoughts. For example, the mother-daughter relationship, the 4-person brawl, and so on. Although Yichen did not care about this, if he had to choose, Yichen would prefer to keep the players in the dark. Yichen had just thought of this when Hillian, who had been in Yichen's arms excitedly for a while, suddenly left Yichen and started to undress Yichen. Yichen, who noticed this, came back to his senses and grabbed Hillian's fair hands. This is not a good place. Let's go to the Castellan's mansion. Hillian was stunned by Yichen's words. Then she asked, Hubby, wasn't Samsara City destroyed by the Immortals? That city was just something that I purposely built to fool Lu Hong and to hide my tracks. The real Reincarnation City is now Reincarnation Immortal City. Yichen couldn't help but chuckle when he heard Yichen's words. Hillian was stunned when she heard this. Then she thought of something. In the next second, Hillian looked straight at Yichen and asked in shock, What? Hubby, are you immortal? Not yet, but soon. When Yichen heard this, he smiled faintly and replied. When Hillian heard this, she was stunned once again. When she came back to her senses, she threw herself into Yichen's arms with a fervent look on her face. Then, she kissed Yichen fiercely. Husband, this concubine is so happy, so happy. Cultivate well in the future, and you will also become an immortal. However, you must remember not to be willful or have any ulterior motives. Yichen couldn't help but smile after hearing Hillian's indescribable excitement. Then he opened his mouth and said, At that moment, He Lian was in a state of excitement. Thus, it was clearly inappropriate for Yi Chun to say those words. However, Yi Chun still said them. This was because Yi Chun wanted He Lian to always remember these words and not to play any tricks on her. That was not what Yi Chun wanted to see. As soon as Yi Chun finished speaking, He Lian nodded without hesitation and said, "That's right. Husband, don't worry. I swear to the heavens that I will never do anything that husband doesn't like. I will always be loyal to husband. If I violate this oath, may the heavens and earth destroy me." As soon as He Lian finished speaking, a thunderous roar could be heard. Boom! When Yi Chun heard this, he was stunned for a moment. After a while, he realized that this was the heavens and earth's response to He Lian's oath. After regaining his senses, Yi Chun could not help but feel warm in his heart. He lowered his head and kissed He Lian. Let's go back to Reincarnation Immortal City. He Lian's face turned red when she heard this. She then nodded gently. When Yi Chun heard this, he smiled lightly. Then, he carried He Lian in his arms. In the next second, Yi Chun's mind moved and the space in front of him instantly distorted. After taking a look at the distorted space, Yi Chun stepped into it and disappeared. Reincarnation Immortal City, the city lord's mansion. In an unoccupied house, the space suddenly distorted. Then, Yi Chun, who was carrying He Lian, appeared in the house. At this moment, He Lian, who was in Yi Chun's arms, widened her eyes. In the sky. Husband, Reincarnation Immortal City is in the sky. As soon as He Lian finished speaking, Yi Chun smiled and said, "It is indeed in the sky. After I feed you, you can look around. If you see Zhao Yun, Dian Wei, Guijia, Guan Yu, and the others, you don't have to hide. Just tell them who you are." When He Lian heard this, her heart was filled with warmth. After being touched, He Lian looked at Yi Chun affectionately, then nodded and said, He Lian was the empress of the Great Han Dynasty. Although this identity was fake, the outside world did not know. Because of this, ever since He Lian confirmed that she could follow Yi Chun and become his woman, she had been worried that she could only keep it in her heart and could not say it out loud. To be more precise, He Lian was worried that she would become a canary in Yi Chun's cage. She would not be able to go out and have no freedom. Although He Lian could accept this, in the end, she still wanted to face the outside world as Yi Chun's official concubine. This had nothing to do with selfishness or showing off. It was purely because she wanted to gain Yi Chun's approval. Otherwise, He Lian would not have been so touched after hearing Yi Chun's words. Seeing how touched He Lian was, Yi Chun could not help but smile. Then, he stroked He Lian's hair and said seriously, "This will be your home. This will be your home from now on. Don't let your thoughts run wild." Yi Chun, who had probed He Lian's soul, could tell what kind of mental state He Lian was in. It was also because Yi Chun knew what He Lian was worried about that he said it so simply and straightforwardly. Yi Chun did not want He Lian to be depressed because of this. Moreover, Yi Chun did not want to raise He Lian as a canary at all. How would he do that? Moreover, Yi Chun's words not only made He Lian feel at ease, but also prevented some misunderstandings. He Lian was the empress of the Great Han Dynasty. She suddenly ran to the Reincarnation Immortal City and became Yi Chun's woman. Whether it was Zhao Yun, Guijia, or Dian Wei, it was difficult for them not to be confused. It was also because of this reason that Yi Chun told He Lian that she did not need to hide anything and just said it directly. As soon as Yi Chun finished speaking, He Lian's heart warmed again. Then, she looked at Yi Chun and said softly, "Husband, carry me into the house." Hearing this, Yi Chun could not help but smile. Then, he nodded and said, "Okay." After saying that, Yi Chun carried He Lian into the house. Not long after, the 8 Directions Spring Rain, one of the top 10 famous weapons, once again displayed its extraordinary power. The process was extremely enjoyable. Of course, if it were not for Yi Chun's strong body, it was very likely that he would not have been able to hold on for long. After 2 hours, when He Lian screamed for the 18th time, Yi Chun was completely comfortable. As for He Lian, she hugged Yi Chun tightly as if she was drowning and desperately grasping at a life-saving straw. After a long time, Yichen wanted to get up and go to the bathroom to wash up. Noticing this, Helian immediately showed a pleading look. Husband. Chapter 1274. After hearing He Lian's words, Yichen instantly understood what He Lian meant. She didn't want little Yichen to come out. Thinking of this, Yichen's mouth couldn't help but twitch. As expected of the woman with the 8-directional spring rain, she could still be so fierce, even though it was her first time. Just as Yichen thought of this, He Lian's expectant voice sounded again. Hubby, carry me. Okay. Yichen couldn't help but smile when he heard this. Then, he carried He Lian up. Yichen didn't refuse He Lian's request. After all, Yichen was also very comfortable and had a reaction. There were many maids in the back of the city lord's mansion. Yichen didn't want the maids to see such a scene. Therefore, after carrying He Lian, Yichen directly used his spatial ability and stepped into the bathroom. The bathroom of the city lord's mansion used hot spring water, and the temperature didn't change 24/7. After Yichen arrived, he carried He Lian into the water. Then, with He Lian's help, he started to wash up. Of course, this process was extremely enjoyable. It lasted for a full 2 hours. Only when He Lian was completely exhausted did Yichen carry He Lian out of the bathroom. In the back of the city lord's mansion, after Yichen placed He Lian on the bed, he went out and called for 2 maids to serve He Lian. Although the act between a man and a woman was very attractive and enjoyable, Yichen wouldn't indulge in it. After all, Yichen still had a long way to go. Before he had the ability to control his own fate, it was fine to occasionally do something between a man and a woman. However, he couldn't indulge himself. Once he indulged himself, Yichen would miss out on many opportunities. This wasn't something Yichen wanted to see. In the main hall of the city lord's mansion, the 2 maids standing at the door hurriedly bowed to Yichen as soon as he arrived. Greetings, Lord Yu of Beach. When Yichen heard this, he nodded and walked straight into the hall. Naturally, Yichen had come here to continue refining Khanate spiritual treasures and Khanate cardinal treasures. He wanted to completely eliminate the dangers that might arise from refining Khanate spiritual treasures and Khanate cardinal treasures after ascending to the Eldritch world. There was no other way. Yichen had already confirmed that using Khanate merit in Tao enlightenment mode could accelerate the refinement of Khanate numinous treasures and Khanate cardinal treasures. It was impossible for him to imitate others and spend thousands of years refining Khanate numinous treasures and Khanate cardinal treasures. This way, no one would find out. But it would take too much time. Yichen didn't have that much time to waste. Moreover, Dongzhu's rebellion had come to an end because of He Lian. The gathering of vassals was about to begin. Although Yichen still had plenty of time, he didn't have much left. Therefore, if Yichen had time to refine, he definitely wouldn't leave it to do other things. The Godslayer, the 12th grade Black Lotus of Destruction, and the Xianhuang exquisite pagoda of heaven and earth had all been refined. All that was left was the heavenly book, the cauldron of heaven and earth, the exquisite 9 orifices stone, the Xianyuan sword, the green lotus flag, the auric sealing pearl, the bow of heaven and earth, the sky quaking arrow, and the treasurefall coin. As for the purple gold-red gourd, he had already given it to Meng Pa. There was no need to refine it. The heavenly book was the imperial edict. The exquisite 9 orifices stone was to be refined into the imperial jade seal, and the Xianyuan sword was the imperial sword. These 3 were the 3 greatest treasures of the Providence dynasty. He had to refine them first. At this thought, Yichen used his mind, and the golden Xianyuan sword instantly appeared in front of Yichen. After glancing at the golden Xianyuan sword, Yichen used his mind, and 10,000 Tao comprehension stones appeared in front of him. 10,000 Tao comprehension stones should be enough. At this thought, Yichen chose to use them without hesitation. Ding! Congratulations to player Yichen for successfully using the Tao comprehension stones. You have officially entered Tao comprehension mode. Duration, 10,000 minutes. As soon as the system notification ended, Yichen used his mind to separate 100 million innate merit points from the massive amount of innate merit points in his body and infuse them into the Xianyuan sword. In an instant, the golden Xianyuan sword vibrated violently. Then, thousands of rays of golden light burst out from the Xianyuan sword. Begin refining. At this thought, Yichen closed his eyes and entered Tao comprehension mode. At the same time, a mysterious aura appeared from Yichen's body. In the blink of an eye, it enveloped the entire City Lord's mansion. Then, it quickly dissipated outside the City Lord's mansion. In the backyard of the City Lord's mansion, Helian, who was resting on the bed while being served by her maidservants, was suddenly stunned. Then, she entered Tao comprehension mode. When Yichen used the innate merit points in Tao comprehension mode to refine the innate spiritual treasure, it would automatically produce a mysterious aura. Anyone who was enveloped by this aura could be enlightened. Otherwise, Helian would not have entered Tao comprehension mode so quickly. When the two maidservants assigned to Helian saw this, they hurriedly stopped tidying up the room. Then, they softened their steps and slowly left the room. Helian was in Tao comprehension mode. They who had experienced it before could naturally see that she was in Tao comprehension mode. They did not want to affect Helian's Tao comprehension mode. With a creaking sound, the two maids closed the door and then stood quietly outside the door. At this moment, a very soft voice suddenly sounded. "Is Yiyu of Gojoseon here?" The two maidservants were stunned when they heard the voice. Then, they hurriedly turned to look. When the two maidservants saw the person who came, they were stunned again. Then, they hurriedly bowed and greeted. "Greetings, madam." The person who came was none other than Yuji, who had been brought to the reincarnation Immortal City by Yichen a long time ago. Hearing this, Yuji nodded. Then, she looked at the closed door and asked, "Is Yiyu of Gojoseon inside?" "Madam, Lord Serene King has already left." When one of the two maids heard this, she shook her head and then bowed. Hearing this, Yuji was slightly stunned. Then, she said, "Sorry to disturb you. If madam has something to say, I can pass the message on your behalf." Among the two maidservants, the one who looked very clever hurriedly bowed and said. Hearing this, Yuji shook her head and said, "It's nothing serious. I just want to talk to Yiyu of Gojoseon. Since Yiyu of Gojoseon has left, he must have something important to do. Don't disturb him." When the clever maidservant heard this, she suddenly thought of something and hurriedly bowed. "Madam, you of Beach specially instructed me that if madam has something to say, I must inform you of Beach in time." The Yiyu of Gojoseon really said that? Yuji was slightly stunned when she heard this. Then she asked. As soon as Yuji's words fell, the other maidservant also thought of something and nodded without hesitation. "Yes, madam. You of Beach did instruct me to do so. Then I'll have to trouble you." Hearing this, Yuji bit her lips and said. When the two maidservants heard this, they looked at each other and then bowed together. "It's no trouble. This is what we should do." Chapter 1275. When Yuji heard this, she nodded and said, "If Yiyu of Gojoseon is not busy, then let him come to my place." "Yes, madam." "Madam." When the two maids heard this, they hurriedly bowed. When Yuji heard this, her face couldn't help but turn red, and she hurriedly left this place. After Yuji left, the quick-witted one of the two maids looked at her companion and said, "Madam must have changed her mind. That should be the case. However, elder sister Xiao Chui, don't you feel that it's strange? How did madam know that Lord Yuang is here?" When a maidservant by the side heard this, she nodded and said. The maid named Xiao Chui smiled and said, "Xiao Chui, I forgot. Little Red, I forgot. When His Excellency the Ghost King called us over, we just happened to pass by madam's residence. At that time, we even mentioned His Excellency the Ghost King. Oh no, madam wouldn't tell on us to you of Beach, would she? We're talking about Lord Ghost King in private. This is an act of disobedience." When a maid called Little Red heard this, she suddenly thought of something and exclaimed in shock. The maid named Xiao Chui hurriedly covered Xiao Chui's mouth and scolded her in a low voice. "You damn girl. It's a crime if you disturb the one inside. Besides, what are you thinking? We were talking about you of Beach, how powerful he is. We didn't say anything bad about him. How could it be an offense?" "Big sister Xiao Chui, I was wrong. However, are we really going to look for Lord Yu King now?" Hearing this, Xiao Hong immediately gave Xiao Chui a grateful look before asking. Xiao Chui hesitated and said, "We have to. Don't forget, Madame Yu Ji has been in Samsara City for so long and hasn't become a real madam. Now that she suddenly came to you of Beach, she must have changed her mind. If we miss this opportunity, who knows how long you of Beach will have to wait." "Big sister Xiao Chui, then which one of us will go?" Hearing that, Lil Red nodded in approval. Then she looked at Xiao Chui and asked. Xiao Chui knocked Xiao Chui's head and said, "I'll go. That's for sure. Although I might be rewarded by His Excellency the Ghost King for this, if it affects His Excellency the Ghost King, then I will be punished." "Sister Xiao Chui, you're so nice," Xiao Chui said softly and grabbed Xiao Chui's hand. Xiao Chui touched Xiao Chui's head and said, Of course. If the Ghost King bestows a reward, I'll share half with you." "Sister Xiao Chui." Xiao Chui's eyes turned red. Xiao Chui glared at Xiao Chui and said in a low voice, "Why are you crying? We're all doing this for the good of you of Beach. You of Beach definitely won't punish me." Lil Red nodded and said. Xiao Chui smiled and said, You stay here and serve them well. I'll go look for his lordship Ghost King and tell him about this." "Yes, Sister Xiao Chui, if you of Beach is busy, don't disturb you of Beach." Xiao Chui nodded and said. When Xiao Chui heard this, she chuckled and nodded. Then she left the house. In the main hall of the city lord's mansion, due to Yi Chun refining the Xianyuan sword, the mysterious and indescribable aura was becoming denser and more intense. When the mysterious aura reached its peak, Yi Chun suddenly opened his eyes. Ding! Congratulations to player Yi Chun for successfully refining the Xianyuan sword. When the system's notification ended, Yi Chun was stunned. Damn, what's going on? Why did it take so little time to refine the Xianyuan sword? The Xianyuan sword was a legendary divine weapon. Although it was not a Khanate spirit treasure, its power was not weak. Of course, this was not important. What was important was that even if Yi Chun used the Khanate merit points in the Enlightenment mode to completely refine the Xianyuan sword, it would take about an hour. But now, in just a few minutes, the Xianyuan sword was completely refined by Yi Chun. How could Yi Chun not be stunned? Could it be that the Xianyuan sword's grade was too low, so it was refined so quickly? No, even if the Xianyuan sword was a divine weapon and could not be compared to a Khanate spirit treasure, it could not be refined in a few minutes. Wait, it must be that the Xianyuan sword cooperated with me to refine it. When Yi Chun thought of this, the Xianyuan sword, which had just been completely refined by Yi Chun, suddenly shook and sent a thought to Yi Chun. Yi Chun, who received the thought from the Xianyuan sword, was stunned. Then his eyes widened. Damn, I was right. It was really the Xianyuan sword that helped me to refine it so quickly. But is it true that the Xianyuan sword wants the Khanate merit points, and then it can level up? When Yi Chun thought of this, the Xianyuan sword, which was floating in the air, suddenly shook a few times. At the same time, a thought that was eager for the Khanate merit points was transmitted from the Xianyuan sword again. Sensing this, Yi Chun glanced at the Xianyuan sword, which was floating in the air. Then, without hesitation, he connected with a massive amount of Khanate merit points in his body. In the next second, Yi Chun directly extracted 1 trillion Khanate merit points from the massive amount of Khanate merit points and injected them into the Xianyuan sword. At this moment, the Xianyuan sword, which was shining with golden light, suddenly lost all its light. When Yi Chun saw this, he was stunned. Damn it, don't fail. I invested 1 trillion Khanate merit points. Just as Yi Chun was stunned by this change, starlight suddenly burst out from the Xianyuan sword, filling the sky. At the same time, the appearance of the Xianyuan sword changed rapidly. Then, it became a long sword covered with star marks and countless ancient runes. Looking at the completely changed appearance of the Xianyuan sword, Yi Qin's expression suddenly tightened. Did I succeed? Just when Yi Qin thought of this, the system's notification suddenly sounded. Ding! Congratulations to player Yi Qin. The divine weapon Xianyuan sword has successfully evolved into a Khanate Merit Cardinal Treasure. As soon as the system's notification ended, Yi Qin's eyes lit up instantly. Damn it! I really succeeded, damn it! Innate Merit Cardinal Treasures. This thing is not inferior to innate cardinal treasures. How could I get so easily? A Khanate Merit Cardinal Treasure was not only powerful, but also killed people without karma. Such an existence was highly sought after even in the untainted world, especially those powerful people who did not want to get their hands on one. Unfortunately, there was a prerequisite for a Khanate Merit Cardinal Treasure to appear, and that was to inject a massive amount of Khanate Merit points into it. And this also limited the number of Khanate Merit Cardinal Treasures. To be more precise, there were very few Khanate Merit Cardinal Treasures in the untainted world. But now, Yi Qin had created a Khanate Merit Cardinal Treasure for himself in such a simple and crude way. How could Yi Qin not be excited? After all, this was an existence that Yi Qin would use as the sword of the Emperor's path. The higher its grade, the more help it would be to the Samsara empire that Yi Qin was about to establish soon. Fortunately, my character is good enough, my luck is heaven-defying, and I obtained a huge amount of Khanate merit. Otherwise, I would only be able to refine the Xianyuan sword this time, and not let it advance to the level of a Khanate Merit Cardinal Treasure. Chapter 1276. Just as Yi Qin thought of this, the system beeped again. Ding! Player Yi Qin, please name your new Innate Merit Cardinal Treasure. If you don't rename it, there's a chance that the new Innate Merit Cardinal Treasure will revert to a divine weapon. As soon as the system beeped, Yi Qin was stunned. Damn! There's such a thing? Ding! Player Yi Qin has 3 seconds to consider. If you miss the time limit, you'll automatically give up. 3, 2, damn, its name will be Reincarnation Sword from now on. As soon as Yi Qin made his decision, the Reincarnation Sword, which was floating in the air, instantly sent out an excited thought. Then, the Reincarnation Sword circled around Yi Qin happily. When Yi Qin saw this, he couldn't help but smile. At this moment, the system beeped again. Ding! New Innate Merit Cardinal Treasure has been named. Congratulations to player Yi Qin for successfully forging the Innate Merit Cardinal Treasure, Reincarnation Sword. Player Yi Qin is rewarded with Innate Attribute Points x 100,000 and Innate Merit x 10 million. As soon as the system beeped, Yi Qin's eyes lit up. Damn, there's a reward for renaming it. As soon as Yi Qin thought of this, the world beeped again. Ding! Congratulations to player Yi Qin for successfully forging the Innate Merit Cardinal Treasure, Reincarnation Sword. As player Yi Qin is the first to forge an Innate Merit Cardinal Treasure, player Yi Qin is rewarded with Innate Attribute Points x 100,000 and Innate Merit x 10 million. The world beeped 3 times and instantly blew up the entire world channel. Damn! Damn! Did I see wrongly? Yu of Gojoseon forged the Innate Merit Cardinal Treasure, Reincarnation Sword? You didn't see wrongly. Not only did he forge it, but he also got 100,000 Innate Attribute Points and 10 million Innate Merit. Damn, that's impossible. Innate Merit Cardinal Treasures are obviously very impressive. How could Yu of Gojoseon forge them? Waha! What do you mean by impossible? Damn, Yu of Gojoseon is just that awesome. Why? Are you not convinced? F***CK. What do you mean I'm not convinced? I'm just shocked. But then again, it's 100,000 innate attribute points. F***CK. If it's given to me, I'll reach the heavens in a single bound. I want it too. Damn it, I only need 5 innate attribute points to become a divine general. If I have 100,000, no, even if it's 1,000, I can advance to the mortal evolution state or even the purple mansion state. By then, I can fly in the air. It's a good idea, but it can only be an idea. Don't forget how Yi Yu of Gojoseon got 100,000 innate attribute points. That's because he forged the innate merit cardinal treasure. Although I don't know what grade the innate merit cardinal treasure is, I know that it's definitely very impressive. No, it's super impressive. Otherwise, it wouldn't reward Yi Yu of Gojoseon with so many innate attribute points. Why are you talking so much nonsense? The world beeped it clearly. But then again, who knows what grade the innate merit cardinal treasure is? F***CK. How can anyone know? Don't forget, we haven't even reached the mortal evolution state. You guys don't know, right? Let me tell you. What is it? Tell us. Cough, cough. I don't know either, but I know it's very impressive. F***CK. You're messing with me. Do you believe that I'll kill you? Stop ting. King Yuye's awesomeness is not something we can compare to. Let's all get a clear look at this reality. F***CK. I've recognized this reality long ago, okay? But then again, what's the benefit of the innate merit cardinal treasure? You're asking the wrong person. No one here knows the benefits of the innate merit cardinal treasure. If you want to know, you can only ask Yu of Gojoseon. Cough, cough. I'm going to continue fighting. The world channel was abuzz, and it kept refreshing. Yichen glanced at it and raised a brow. There were still players who knew the use of the innate merit cardinal treasure, but no one dared to say it now. When Yichen returned to the real world, he annihilated countless hidden forces. Such brutal behavior completely frightened the remaining hidden forces. How would they dare to say this and that, and reveal information related to Yichen? Even if the innate merit cardinal treasure didn't matter, the remaining hidden forces were unwilling to say it. After all, it was better to be safe than sorry. If they really offended Yichen, it would be too late to say anything. Thinking of this, the corners of his mouth curled up. Then he looked directly at the reincarnation sword, which was floating in front of him and constantly exuding happiness. From now on, you're my sword of the Emperor's path. As soon as Yichen finished speaking, the reincarnation sword floating in front of Yichen gently rubbed against Yichen and then flew straight to Yichen. In the blink of an eye, it flew back to Yichen's purple mansion. Yichen glanced at the reincarnation sword in his purple mansion and smiled slightly. At this moment, the maid named Xiao Chui came to the entrance of the hall and bowed to Yichen. You Lord Beach, Madame Yuji wants to invite you over for a chat. Yuji? Yichen was slightly stunned when he heard this. Then, he looked at the maid named Xiao Chui and asked, what did Yuji say at that time? Yuji was a super historical beauty of the pre-Qin period that Yichen brought back to reincarnation Immortal City from the secret realm of the Underground Palace. Because of Xiang Yu's self-destruction, Yuji had been brooding over it. Therefore, even if she lived in reincarnation Immortal City, Yuji didn't say much to Yichen and stayed in the room all day long. Originally, Yichen had planned to give up Yuji and let her live in the Copper Sparrow Pavilion in the future. Who would have thought that Yuji changed her usual shut-in temperament and took the initiative to come over and talk to Yichen? How could Yichen not be surprised? As soon as Yichen finished speaking, the maid named Xiao Chui knelt on the ground with a plop. You Lord Beach, Madame Yuji just went to the new Madame's house and wanted to talk to you Lord Beach. I was afraid that Madame Yuji would change her mind, so I told Madame Yuji that you Lord Beach had told me that if Madame Yuji had something to do with something, I must inform you Lord Beach in time. I really deserve to die for making the decision without permission. Please forgive me, Lord you Lord Beach. Yichen was stunned again when he heard the words of the maid named Xiao Chui. Yichen didn't expect that there would be such a complicated process. After coming back to his senses, Yichen couldn't help but smile and say, you're smart. You did the right thing this time. Don't make decisions without permission in the future. Get up. Thank you very much, Lord you Lord Beach. The maidservant called Xiao Chui let out a sigh of relief after hearing this. She rose from her seat and bowed toward Yichen. Seeing this, Yichen waved his right hand, and 2 upper spiritual stones appeared in his hand instantly. This is your reward. Go back and serve Madame well. Chapter 1277. As soon as Yichen finished speaking, the eyes of the maid named Xiao Chui lit up. Then, she hurriedly took the 2 high-grade spirit stones and bowed to Yichen. Yes, Lord Yu of Beach. When Yichen heard this, he nodded with a smile and walked straight out of the door. Yichen was still unable to make an accurate judgment as to why Yu Ji had suddenly come looking for him. However, even if he couldn't make an accurate judgment, it was still a great improvement in their relationship. After all, Yu Ji had always stayed in her room and didn't come out. Not long after, Yichen arrived at the house where Yu Ji lived. Looking at the door that wasn't closed, Yichen couldn't help but smile and walk in. As soon as he entered, the 2 maids in charge of serving Yu Ji saw Yichen. After being stunned for a moment, the 2 maids hurriedly bowed to Yichen and said, "Greetings, Lord Yu of Beach." When Yichen heard this, he nodded with a smile and said, "You can leave." "Yes, Lord Yu of Beach." When the 2 maids heard this, they hurriedly bowed and walked out of the door. With a creaking sound, the door was closed by the 2 maids. When Yichen saw this, he was stunned. Yichen didn't expect the 2 maids to be so smart. After coming back to his senses, Yichen couldn't help but smile and walk straight to Yu Ji's bedroom. Just as Yichen entered Yu Ji's bedroom, Yu Ji, who was sitting by the bed, suddenly trembled. She hurriedly stood up and bowed to Yichen. "Greetings, Lord Yu of Beach." When Yichen heard this, he nodded with a smile and sat on the chair in Yu Ji's bedroom. After Yichen sat down, he looked at Yu Ji, who had an obvious nervous expression on her face, and said, "Have you gotten used to living here during this period of time? Is there anything you're not used to?" Although Yichen didn't know how to sweet talk, nor did he know how to pick up girls, he knew that he couldn't directly ask Yu Ji why she was looking for him just now. If Yichen asked this question, then the possibility of Yu Ji having a change of heart in her heart would definitely plummet. Yichen didn't want to see such a situation happen. After all, Yu Ji was a first-rate historical beauty. Of course, the most important thing was that Yu Ji was still a virgin. If it weren't for these 2 points, Yichen wouldn't be so Yi. As soon as Yichen's words fell, Yu Ji's heart immediately warmed, and the nervousness in her heart also plummeted. "Thank you, Lord Yu of Beach, for your concern. I'm not used to it." "That's good." When Yichen heard this, he nodded with a smile and continued, "If there's anything that doesn't go your way, or if the maids did something wrong, just tell me directly." When Yu Ji heard this, she glanced at Yichen and replied softly. After Yichen heard Yu Ji's tone of having something in her heart but hesitating to say it, he was silent for a moment, then looked at Yu Ji and asked, "You've been in the reincarnation Immortal City for a while. Have you thought about welcoming a new life?" Because of Xiang Yu's death, Yu Ji had never been able to accept Yichen. Yichen knew about this and could understand it. However, this was the obstacle between Yu Ji and Yichen. He had to ask. If he didn't say it clearly, then what awaited Yichen would only be entangled. Yichen didn't want to see such a situation happen, so after Yichen said a few words to Yu Ji to ease the tense atmosphere, he asked such a question. As soon as Yichen's question fell, Yu Ji's body suddenly stiffened. Sensing Yu Ji's stiff body, Yichen let out a long sigh, then stood up and said, "Since you're not mentally prepared, then you can live in the Copper Sparrow Pavilion from now on." Yu Ji suddenly looked for Yichen. In Yichen's eyes, it was a sign that she had changed her mind. Unfortunately, at the last moment, Yu Ji's performance was still hesitating. Although Yichen could use force, Yichen didn't want to only get Yu Ji's body and not her heart. Otherwise, Yichen wouldn't have said that. As soon as Yichen's words fell, Yu Ji's identity trembled violently, and then she hurriedly said, "Lord Yu of Beach." When Yu Ji was in the secret realm of the underground palace, she was a soul. It was Yichen who made Yu Ji come back to life and get new life. Yu Ji remembered this point in her heart. For Yu Ji, she was grateful to Yichen and Yichen. However, she couldn't completely forget Xiang Yu, who had died by self-explosion, which made her feel conflicted until today. Originally, Yu Ji thought that Yichen would be like those monarchs in the pre-Qin period, who would forcibly occupy all the women he wanted. However, since she came to the reincarnation Immortal City, Yi Chun, the Prince Yu of Han, hadn't visited her even once. This result made Yu Ji happy, but at the same time, she was a little disappointed. Of course, she was more confused. She was happy because she could continue to be a virgin. She was disappointed because she was obviously first class, but Yi Chun, the Prince Yu of Han, turned a blind eye to her. As for the confusion, it was because Yi Chun's performance made her completely confused. It was impossible to say that Yi Chun didn't get close to women. Yi Chun had many wives, each as beautiful as a fairy. It was even more impossible to say that Yi Chun didn't have feelings for her. If he didn't have feelings, how could Yi Chun say those words to her when he left the secret realm of the underground palace? It was precisely because of these complicated senses that Yu Ji gradually developed the idea of wanting to understand Yi Chun. With Yu Ji's understanding, Yu Ji's impression of Yi Chun became better and better. After all, Zhao Yu, Diao Chan, Kai Yin, Mi Zhen, Huang Yuang, Zhen Mi, the five sisters Philos Aureus, De Qiao, and Xiao Qiao. The happiness they showed every day was not fake at all. How could a man who could make so many women happy at the same time be bad? It was also because Yu Ji's impression of Yi Chun was getting better and better that she gradually forgot the past and gradually turned her mind to Yi Chun. Unfortunately, Yi Chun didn't visit her, which made Yu Ji gradually disappointed. Finally, the disappointment just broke out, and finally, Yu Ji, who heard the conversation of the two maids, subconsciously went to the house where Yin lived, wanting to see Yi Chun. This was a reason why Yu Ji had just gone to see Yi Chun. This didn't mean that Yu Ji had really made up her mind to commit herself to Yi Chun and become Yi Chun's woman, but because Yu Ji was controlled by her own emotions. Otherwise, Yu Ji's body wouldn't have suddenly stiffened when Yi Chun asked. If Yi Chun hadn't continued to say that last sentence, Yu Ji might have continued to hesitate, but that was only an assumption. In fact, Yi Chun had said it, and also expressed the intention to completely give up on Yu Ji. This point instantly stabbed Yu Ji's heart. It couldn't be helped. Any woman, when faced with a man who truly liked her, had saved her life, and had given her a new life, was very outstanding in all aspects. And she also suddenly heard this man say that he wanted to give up. It was impossible for her to remain calm. Otherwise, how could Yu Ji suddenly be like this? After hearing Yu Ji's trembling words, Yi Chun's eyes lit up. Damn it, there was probably a chance. Chapter 1278. Thinking of this, Yi Chun looked straight at Yu Ji and said, "Don't worry. I won't force you, and I won't blame you. In the future, your standard of living won't decrease." At this time, it was not suitable to ask what's the matter or I've thought it through. If Yi Chun asked, Yu Ji, who had been provoked, would most likely hesitate again. Yi Chun did not want to see such a situation. As soon as Yi Chun finished speaking, 2 lines of clear tears flowed from the corners of Yu Ji's eyes. When Yi Chun saw this, his heart couldn't help but ache. F***CK. Could it be that the stimulation was too much? Just as Yi Chun thought of this, Yu Ji threw herself into Yi Chun's arms and hugged Yi Chun tightly. At this moment, Yi Chun was stunned at first, then he smiled. The result was not bad, and the stimulation was not in vain. At least, Yu Ji had made a choice. Just as Yi Chun thought of this, Yu Ji, who was hugging Yi Chun tightly, suddenly choked up and said, I don't know if this is right or wrong, but I don't want to lose Lord Yu of Beach." When Yi Chun heard Yu Ji's words, he sighed inwardly and said, "There's no right or wrong. The past is the past. People have to live in the present and look forward to the future." Yi Chun gently lifted Yu Ji's chin, then looked into Yu Ji's eyes and said seriously, "Don't worry." He said seriously, "The most important thing is that your heart has already told you what the real choice is." As soon as Yi Chun finished speaking, Yu Ji was stunned at first, then she slowly calmed down. After the time it took to brew a cup of tea, Yu Ji hugged Yi Chun tightly again and let out a long breath. "Lord Yu of Beach is right. My heart has indeed made me make a choice." When Yi Chun heard this, he couldn't help but smile. "Now that you've understood your own heart, you should just enjoy life properly. If you have nothing to do, you should go out and take a look at the reincarnation of Mortal City and the reincarnation of Mortal Island. After that, you should cultivate properly. Yuji nodded gently and said. Ichin raised his eyebrows when he heard this. This time, the situation was really stable. However, today was not a suitable day to take down Yuji. Just as Ichin thought of this, Yuji, who had just finished speaking, suddenly raised her head to look at Ichin and said softly, "Lord, you of Beach, please take this concubine." When Ichin heard this, he couldn't help but be stunned. He didn't expect Yuji to suddenly say such words. After a brief moment of daze, Ichin looked straight at Yuji and said, "That's right." Okay, Ichin wasn't very clear about what Yuji was thinking, but that wasn't important. What was important was that Ichin knew one thing, and that was that Yuji had used a lot of courage to say what she had just said. If Ichin refused, or said something about waiting a little longer, Yuji's heart might change again. Instead of letting things change in a direction that was out of control, it was better to directly eliminate the uncontrollable factors. It was also for this reason that Yi-chun agreed directly. As soon as Yi-chun finished speaking, Yuji's face immediately turned red. When Yi-chun saw this, he directly carried Yuji by the waist. Yuji, who seemed to have foreseen what was about to happen, suddenly stiffened and then closed her eyes tightly. When Yi-chun saw this, he couldn't help but smile and say, "Relax. Don't be so nervous." Yuji's face turned red again when she heard this, and then she responded softly. When Yi-chun heard this, he smiled slightly and then gently kissed Yuji. Not long after a soft cry, Yuji completed the change of identity, but Yi-chun was stunned. This was a six-sided ambush. That's right, it was a six-sided ambush. What the hell? I've picked up a treasure again. When he thought of this, Yi-chun couldn't help but feel happy. Time passed bit by bit. 2 hours later, Yuji was like an octopus, hugging Yi-chun tightly. Looking at Yuji, who was covered in sweat but still unwilling to let go, Yi-chun let out a long breath. Not bad, not bad. Yuji had completely taken him down. Thinking of this, Yi-chun couldn't help but smile. Then, he hugged Yuji and quietly enjoyed the quiet moment. After the time it took to drink a cup of tea, Yi-chun carried Yuji to the bathroom. After washing up, Yi-chun chatted with Yuji for a while, had a meal, and rested for the night in Yuji's house. Yuji was a new wife, and with her past experience, she needed Yi-chun's company very much. If Yi-chun didn't care about Yuji and left as soon as he got it, it would be a great blow to Yuji. Such a situation was not what Yi-chun wanted to see. The next day, at dawn, after having breakfast with Yuji, Yi-chun accompanied her for a stroll in the reincarnation Immortal City and the reincarnation forest for a while. After repeatedly confirming that Yuji had indeed given up on the past, Yi-chun completely relaxed. After all, Yuji had a past. If she didn't completely let go, there was a high chance that there would be unexpected changes. Yi-chun didn't want to see such a situation happen. Luoyang, Imperial Palace Hall. Looking at Dongjua, who had all the civil and military officials present, he grasped the long sword at his waist with his right hand and shouted, "The young emperor was unfortunately killed last night. I am very sad. However, the country can't be without a ruler for a day. Therefore, I recommend the second prince to succeed the throne. What do you think?" Hearing this, all the civil and military officials who knew that the Western Liang army had cruelly killed the Yuan family last night exchanged glances and then said in unison, "I agree. That's good." Hearing this, Dongjun nodded with satisfaction. Then, he looked at the soldiers of Western Liang standing at the entrance of the hall and shouted, "Take His Majesty into the hall and prepare to ascend the throne." "Yes, General." When the Western Liang soldiers who were standing at the door heard this, they quickly bowed and saluted. After that, they hurriedly ran away. Before long, Lu Xie, the second prince, accompanied by a group of eunuchs and maids, came to the hall and went straight to the dragon throne. When he came to the dragon throne, Lu Xie glanced at it with a complicated expression and then turned to sit on it. Seeing this, Dongjua smiled coldly, then took the lead and bowed to Lu Xie. Greetings, your majesty. Long live the emperor. Long live the emperor. Dong Zhuo's words caused the civil and military officials to look at each other and then bow to Lu Xie. Greetings, your majesty. Long live the emperor. Long live the emperor. Lu Xie, who was sitting on the dragon throne, nodded when he heard this and said, "You may rise." "Many thanks, your majesty." Dong Zhuo and the civil and military officials bowed and said after hearing this. They straightened their backs after finishing their words. Lu Xie turned to the eunuch holding the imperial edict and said, "Announce the edict." "Announce the edict." "Yes, your majesty." When the eunuch heard this, he hurriedly bowed and said. After he finished speaking, he walked to the front of the table and opened the imperial edict. By the will of the heavens, the emperor decrees that for Dong Zhuo and Dong Bingzhou's contributions, Dong Bingzhou shall be conferred the title of Great General, in charge of all the soldiers of the realm. At the same time, he shall also hold the position of Prime Minister. All the civil and military officials paled at the eunuch's words. At this moment, Dong Zhuo righteously bowed to Lu Xie. "Many thanks, your majesty. Zhuo will not disappoint your majesty." Chapter 1279. As soon as Dong Zhuo finished speaking, Lu Xie's eyes narrowed, a cold light flashing through them. The current Lu Xie was no longer the Lu Xie of history. He had obtained Li Mubai's memories and knew the direction of the Great Han's history. He knew his own future, and he knew what kind of existence Dong Zhuo was. It was precisely because Lu Xie knew that he was looking at Dong Zhuo with killing intent. It couldn't be helped. Not only had Dong Zhuo brought disaster to the entire Dark Han imperial family, he had even completely destroyed the last trace of karmic luck and dignity of the Dark Han imperial family. It was impossible for Lu Xie not to hate Dong Zhuo. However, no matter how much Lu Xie hated Dong Zhuo, it was useless. The current him simply didn't have the ability to resist Dong Zhuo. Even if Lu Xie had the ability, he wouldn't dare, much less resist Dong Zhuo. As for the reason, it was very simple. Yi Chen wouldn't allow it. As Yi Chen's slave, Lu Xie had already been ordered by Yi Chen to not change a single bit of the Great Han's history. If Lu Xie dared to disobey Yi Chen's order, then what awaited Lu Xie would be a fate worse than death. Whether it was cruel or callous, Yi Chen wouldn't be soft-hearted when it came to unifying the world and ascending. The moment the cold light in Lu Xie's eyes disappeared, Dong Zhuo, who had bowed to Lu Xie, stood up and looked at him. "Your Majesty, the Yuan clan rebelled last night and wantonly set the imperial palace on fire. The previous emperor, the Empress Dowager, and the Empress Dowager perished in the sea of flames. I implore your Majesty to issue a decree declaring the Yuan clan a traitor and summon all ambitious people to suppress them." When Lu Xie heard this, he froze in place. There was nothing he could do about it. In history, Dong Zhuo had never done such a thing. Now that Dong Zhuo had brought it up, how could Lu Xie not be stunned? While Lu Xie was in a daze and didn't know what to do, a civil official stepped forward and bowed to Lu Xie. "Your Majesty, last night, Yuan Shao and Yuan Binshu led the disciples of the aristocratic families to kill the eunuchs who had brought disaster to the country and the people. It is obvious that they are devoted to the country and have no intention of rebelling. As for the fire in the palace last night, it should be related to the thunderstorm. It must be the heavenly thunder that ignited the hall where the Empress Dowager, the former emperor, and the empress lived. This is a natural disaster, not a man-made one." When Lu Xie heard this, he immediately came back to his senses. Just as he was about to speak, Dong Zhuo's eyes suddenly widened, and then he shouted loudly, "Men, drag this Yuan clan's accomplice away and beat him to death." As soon as Dong Zhuo finished speaking, 2 Western Yang soldiers rushed into the main hall and stopped the civil official who was explaining for the Yuan family. "Dong Zhuo, you idiot! You wreaked havoc in the imperial palace and even killed the loyal subjects of the Great Han dynasty. You will suffer retribution." Hearing this, Dong Zhuo's eyes blazed with fury. "Damn you! With that, Dong Zhuo pulled out the long sword at his waist. He walked up to the civil official in a few steps and stabbed him. Squelch! The civil official's heart was instantly pierced. Everyone, Dong Zhuo is the traitor. He should be executed. He should be executed. The civil official raised his right hand and pointed at Dong Zhuo. He roared with all his might, and then he died on the spot. When the civil and military officials saw this, their expressions turned unnatural. Dong Zhuo snorted and kicked the dead civil official into the air. Bang! The civil official's corpse fell heavily to the ground. At this moment, Dong Zhuo, still holding his bloody sword, looked at the civil and military officials and shouted, "Who else? Who else?" When the civil and military officials heard this, they looked at each other, then lowered their heads one by one. When Dong Zhuo saw this, he curled his lips in disdain. At this moment, a Shiliang soldier suddenly rushed in. Reporting to Great General, Cao Cao wishes to present you with a treasure. He is waiting outside the imperial palace. Dong Zhuo was stunned for a moment, and then his eyes lit up. A second later, Dong Zhuo looked at the civil and military officials and said, Cao Cao wishes to present Cao Cao to Cao Cao. Cao Cao wishes to present a treasure to Zhuo. Everyone, why don't you come with me to watch? Li Ru, standing among the civil and military officials, hastily stepped forward and bowed. Prime Minister, Ru believes that this matter is inappropriate and has summoned Cao Cao. Prime Minister, you must play around and risk your life. Dong Zhuo's eyes widened, and he shouted, Cao Cao is alone, but my Western Yang army has 1,000,000 soldiers. How is this dangerous? Dong Zhuo wanted to leave the palace to meet Cao Cao so that the people of Luoyang and the old clans of Luoyang could see how awesome he was and how great his prestige was. Otherwise, why would Cao Cao come here to present a treasure? If Cao Cao came to the imperial palace, the people wouldn't be able to see the process of Cao Cao presenting the treasure, let alone what treasure Cao Cao was presenting. In that case, how could Dong Zhuo raise his prestige? Although Dong Zhuo wanted to show off, he also wanted to gain true prestige and recognition. There was no helping it. He came from Western Liang and gave the people of the Central Plains the impression that, although he wasn't a barbarian, he was no different from an ordinary man. Dong Zhuo didn't like this, so he wanted to change people's impression of him. He wanted everyone to know that he was not only strong, but also famous. As soon as Dong Zhuo finished speaking, Li Ru's body suddenly stiffened. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. There was nothing to be done. Dong Zhuo didn't allow any rebuttal. If Li Ru continued to advise him, he would be severely punished. While Li Ru was silent, a general stepped forward and bowed to Dong Zhuo. Great General's words are extremely correct. This Zhang is willing to follow Great General out of the palace and see the treasure Cao Amon has presented. We are willing to follow Great General out of the palace. The civil and military officials glanced at each other and then bowed. When Dong Zhuo heard this, he laughed heartily, then strode out of the hall. When the other officials saw this, they followed him out of the hall. Before long, Dong Zhuo led the civil and military officials to the imperial palace. He saw Cao Cao standing in the distance outside the palace gates. Dong Zhuo was stunned at first, but then he smiled. It was no wonder that Dong Zhuo was so happy. Although Cao Cao was standing a little far from the gates, there were many people behind him. This was exactly what Dong Zhuo wanted to see. Come, let's go. Dong Zhuo snapped out of his daze and shouted. He led the civil and military officials toward Cao Cao. When Dong Zhuo arrived in front of Cao Cao, Cao Cao bowed to Dong Zhuo. Cao Cao greets Dong Bingzhou. As soon as Cao Cao finished speaking, Dong Zhuo's personal guard shouted, Impudent! My lord has been conferred the title of Great General and Prime Minister. Cao Cao froze for a moment. Then he bowed to Dong Zhuo again. Cao Cao greets Dong Xianghua. Dong Zhuo nodded in satisfaction and asked, I heard that you have a treasure to show me. I heard that you want to present me with a treasure. I wonder what treasure it is. Cao Cao raised his right hand, and a weapon covered in red cloth appeared in his hand. He raised it with both hands and presented it to Dong Zhuo. Dong Zhuo's eyes lit up. He looked at Cao Cao and asked, What is it? What is it? Cao Cao smiled and bowed again. Prime Minister, this is the seven-star saber. It can cut through iron like mud and cut through hair. Chapter 1280. As soon as Cao Cao finished speaking, Dongzhuo's personal guards' expressions changed. They quickly drew their swords from their waists. Dongzhuo saw this and waved his hand, gesturing for the guards to put away their weapons. After all the guards put away their weapons, Dongzhuo walked toward Cao Cao with a smile on his face. Dongzhuo might be fat, but he was quite strong. Otherwise, he wouldn't be so confident. When Dongzhuo was 1 meter away from Cao Cao, Cao Cao, who was holding the seven-star saber with both hands, suddenly grabbed the handle of the saber with his right hand and drew it out with a shing sound. At this moment, a cold light flashed and the cold blade slashed toward Dongzhuo. Dongzhuo, who was suddenly attacked, narrowed his eyes and quickly retreated. However, it was too late. The blade of the seven-star saber still hit Dongzhuo's shoulder. With a shing sound, a wound was instantly cut open on Dongzhuo's body. At this moment, a large amount of blood spurted out as if it didn't cost anything. When Dongzhuo's personal guard saw this, they took out their weapons and rushed toward Cao Cao without hesitation. Cao Cao, who was about to stab Dongzhuo a second time, spat on the ground and turned to run. Kill him. Kill him for me. Kill his entire family. Dongzhuo, who was cut by Cao Cao, shouted sternly as he pointed at Cao Cao's back with bloodshot eyes. Dongzhuo didn't expect Cao Cao to assassinate him in the name of offering treasures. The entire Luoyang was under Dongzhuo's control. Who would dare to act rashly? But in the end, Cao Cao really dared to do so. Moreover, he succeeded in stabbing Dongzhuo. Damn it, if it wasn't for his fat body, this stab would have cut open his stomach. Li Ru, who came here with the civil and military officials, sighed deeply when he saw this. He then looked at the Shiliang personal guards who surrounded Dongzhuo and shouted, "Bring back the minister of Luoyang. Quickly bring the prime minister back to his residence. Also, summon all the physicians and imperial physicians. If anyone dares to refuse, kill them." As soon as Li Ru finished speaking, the guards surrounding Dongzhuo hurriedly took action. They then carried Dongzhuo to Dongzhuo's residence in Luoyang. In the backyard of the city governor's mansion in Reincarnation Immortal City, Yi Chun, who was accompanying Yu Ji, frowned when he heard the news from Lu Xie. Damn it, the history of the Great Han Dynasty had changed quite a bit. Dongzhuo wanted to label the Yuan clan as traitors. This was something that had never happened in the history of the Great Han Dynasty. As for how Cao Cao presented the treasure, it was a little different from the true process of Great Han history. Otherwise, Yichun would not think this way. Just as Yichun was thinking about whether the history of the Great Han Dynasty had really turned an uncontrollable corner, Yuji, who saw Yichun frowning, peeled off the orange peel, then took a piece of orange and handed it to Yichun's mouth. "Husband, is there something troubling you?" When Yichun heard this, he immediately snapped out of his daze and opened his mouth to eat the orange Yuji handed to him. "Not really. It's just that some things are developing in an uncontrollable direction." When Yuji heard this, she nodded and said softly, "Husband, I don't understand the big things, but I know that nothing will remain the same." When Yichun heard this, he was slightly taken aback. Yichun had not expected Yuji to say this. After a brief moment of daze, Yichun snapped out of his daze and looked at Yuji. "You're right. I was too focused." Yichun wanted to wait for the vassal contest to begin, but if there really were unforeseen circumstances and it did not appear, Yichun did not need to force it, nor did he need to fret over it. After all, the Great Tao was 50 and the heavenly divination was 49. If this place was not perfect, how could there be anything perfect in the world? As soon as Yichun finished speaking, an inexplicable fluctuation instantly appeared on Yichun's body. At the same time, an enormous amount of heaven and earth spirit qi instantly surged towards Yichun. In the blink of an eye, a huge spirit qi vortex appeared above the city lord's mansion. When Yuji, who was sitting beside Yichun, saw this, she was immediately taken aback and hurriedly shut her mouth. Although Yuji's realm was not very high. She still had some understanding of Yi Chen's current state. She did not want to affect Yi Chen's epiphany. That's right, it was an epiphany. And what caused Yi Chen to have an epiphany was a simple sentence from Yuji. Even Yi Chen himself had not expected this result. Of course, this was not important. What was important was that Yi Chen had not relied on any external objects and had entered an epiphany on his own. This would allow Yi Chen to obtain unimaginable benefits. 2 hours later, Yi Chen, who had entered an epiphany state, suddenly opened his eyes. Then, 2 beams of light shot out from Yi Chen's eyes. Ding! Congratulations to player Yi Chen for completing the epiphany. Your physical strength has increased tenfold. As soon as the system's notification ended, Yi Chen's eyes lit up. Holy shit! Not only did I have an epiphany on my own, but my physical strength has also increased tenfold. Yi Chen was prepared to walk the path of using strength to prove his Tao. Whether it was his physical body or his primordial spirit, they all needed to be improved. And before this epiphany, Yi Chen's primordial spirit had far surpassed Yi Chen's physical body. In such a state, no matter what Yi Chen did, there would be an uncoordinated situation. For example, when Yi Chen threw out a punch, he had the thought in his mind, but his body was half a beat slower. This was the result of his body being uncoordinated. Of course, this kind of uncoordination did not have much of an effect in the Three Kingdoms Novice Zone. After all, Yi Chen's realm was there for all to see. Even if Yi Chen's physical body was not in harmony with his primordial spirit, no one would be able to see it, and no one would be able to withstand a single attack from Yi Chen. Of course, this was limited to the Three Kingdoms Novice Zone. If Yi Chen's physical body and primordial spirit were still uncoordinated in the Great Wilderness world, then when Yi Chen fought with the enemy, there was a 90% chance that he would be severely injured because of this uncoordinated state. This was no joke. One had to know that in the Great Wilderness world battles, victory and defeat were often decided in an instant. Originally, Yi Chen had planned to cultivate the 9 Revolutions mystic art with all his strength after ascending to the Great Wilderness world, and then greatly improve his physical strength. This way, Yi Chen's physical body and primordial spirit could quickly reach the level of compatibility and then be completely wiped out. The idea appeared, but the body did not keep up. As a result, Yi Chen's physical strength increased by 10 times because of this epiphany. This result shocked Yi Chen. Of course, after the shock, there was a great surprise. After all, Yi Chen's physical body and primordial spirit had already reached the level of compatibility. This way, Yi Chen's body would not have any disharmony. Damn it, this accident. I like it. Thinking of this, Yi Chen could not help but smile. Then, he hugged Yuji, who was about to congratulate him, and kissed her fiercely. Thank you, madam. Chapter 1281. As soon as Yi Chen finished speaking, Yuji smiled sweetly and said, Husband, you have such a great fortune. For my husband to have such a fortuitous encounter, it must be because of my husband's great fortune. I dare not claim credit for it. As soon as Yuji finished speaking, Yi Chen couldn't help but smile. Then, he pulled Yuji into his arms. Wife, no matter how great my fortune is, I wouldn't have been able to comprehend it without you. Don't you think your husband should thank you properly? Husband. Sensing that little Yi Chen suddenly took up the banner, Yuji blushed and said with a trembling voice. Yuji wasn't afraid. To be more precise, Yuji couldn't wait for Yi Chen to act like this. Of course, Yuji wouldn't say this out loud. But even so, Yuji was still very happy. However, it was broad daylight and they were in the hall. It would be embarrassing if the maids saw them like this. Hearing Yuji's shy words, Yi Chen couldn't help but smile. He then carried Yuji to the back residence. As soon as Yi Chen arrived at the back residence, a world announcement suddenly sounded. Ding! Dong Zhuo is excessively licentious and has caused chaos in the court. Cao Cao has issued a declaration calling for all ambitious people in the world to suppress Dong Zhuo together. Ding! Bohai prefects Yuan Shao and Yuan Benshu have responded to Cao Cao. Leading 1. 8 million soldiers. They're ready to go to war. Ding. Wanching prefects Yuan Shu and Yuan Gonglu have responded to Cao Cao. Leading 1. 32 million soldiers. They are ready to go to war. Ding. Ji province prefects Han Fu and Han Wenjie have responded to Cao Cao. Leading 1. 18 million soldiers. They are ready to go to war. Ding. Gunzhou prefects Lu Dai and Lu Gongshan have responded to Cao Cao. Leading 800,000 soldiers. They are ready to go to war. Ding. Haniai prefects Wang Quang and Wang Gongjia have responded to Cao Cao. Leading 600,000 soldiers. They are ready to go to war. Ding. Shanyang prefects Yuan Yi and Yuan Boy have responded to Cao Cao. Leading 1 million soldiers. They are ready to go to war. Ding. Bing province prefects Ding Yuan and Ding Jianyang have responded to Cao Cao. Leading 1,200,000 soldiers. They are ready to go to war. Ding. The plot of the warlords seeking Dong has officially begun. All players can choose a faction. During this period, players who kill enemy faction players or enemy soldiers and officers will receive experience and points as rewards. A series of world announcements flooded the screen, instantly exploding the entire world channel. F*CK. F*CK. What's going on? Dongzhua's rebellion only started a few days ago, and they've already entered the plot of the feudal vassals seeking Dongzhua? Isn't it obvious? Is there need to ask? But then again, can someone tell me how Ding Yuan became one of the 18 feudal lords? I also find it strange. Motherfucker, wasn't Ding Yuan killed by Lu Bu before the warlords' demand Dong plot started? Why is he still alive? And why is he even one of the vassals that went against Dongzhua? Who cares? Whether or not he's one of the feudal lords has nothing to do with me. I just want to know which camp you've chosen. Which faction should we choose? Do you even need to ask? Of course, I'll choose whichever faction Yu of Gojoseon chooses. F*CK. You son of a B*TCH. You're so cunning. But I'll do the same. Choose my ass. I think Yu of Gojoseon won't participate at all. Don't forget, Yu of Gojoseon hasn't appeared since the World War. That can't be. If you participate in the plot, you'll be rewarded with experience and points. If you get enough points, you'll definitely be able to exchange them for a lot of good stuff. Who the F*CK knows? Anyway, I won't choose a camp first. Unless King Yu really doesn't want to participate, I'll choose then. Me too. The world channel was abuzz. Yichen couldn't help but raise his eyebrows after glancing at it. Although the trajectory of Great Han's history had changed, the process hadn't. The feudal vassals seeking Dongzhua had begun. But what was going on between Ding Yuan and Lu Bu? Thinking of this, Yi Chun released his divine sense. In the blink of an eye, it covered the entire Great Han. In the next second, Yi Chun's divine sense locked onto Ding Yuan's location. Bing Province, Ding Yuan's military tent. Ding Yuan glanced at the angry Lu Bu and said, "Fengxian, I'll leave the matter of the provisions to you." Hearing this, Lu Bu's face sank. He then bowed to Ding Yuan. "Adoptive father, why don't you let Bu be the vanguard? Bu swears that I won't let adoptive father down. Your personality is too unstable. Letting you escort the provisions is a trial for you. Do you understand?" Ding Yuan frowned when he heard this. He then looked at Lu Bu and said. Hearing this, Lu Bu suddenly became silent. Seeing Lu Bu's silence, Ding Yuan let out a long sigh and then said to Lu Bu, "Fengxian, in the future, you'll inherit everything I have. Don't disappoint me." When Lu Bu heard this, he took a deep breath. After exhaling a long breath, he looked directly at Ding Yuan and then solemnly bowed and said, "Adoptive father, Bu has heard these words for many years. I don't want to hear them anymore." "Fengxian, what do you mean?" Ding Yuan's face sank and he roared. When Lu Bu heard this, he straightened his body. In an instant, the aura of a great perfection saint erupted from Lu Bu. "Adoptive father, Bu has the ability, but you won't let Bu use it. Bu has a better future and can follow Prince Yu of Han. Adoptive father, please cut off Bu's thoughts." Saying this, Lu Bu's eyes suddenly widened. A cold light flashed in his eyes. At the same time, immense killing intent erupted from Lu Bu's body. Adoptive father, tell your child what you're afraid of. Impudent. Ding Yuan was enraged. He rushed to the entrance of the tent and roared, "Man, adoptive father, you forced me to do this." Hearing this, Lu Bu's eyes flashed with an ominous glint. With a clang, he unsheathed the long sword at his waist. Seeing this, Ding Yuan's eyes narrowed. At this moment, the sword in Lu Bu's right hand fiercely swung toward Ding Yuan. Ding Yuan's head instantly flew into the air. Then a large amount of blood sprayed out from Ding Yuan's headless corpse. At this moment, several of Ding Yuan's personal guards rushed in and were stunned on the spot. "Are you going to follow me, or are you going to die?" At this time, Lu Bu's two scarlet eyes looked at Ding Yuan's personal guards who had entered the large tent and shouted loudly. When the personal guards heard this, they looked at each other and then bowed to Lu Bu in unison. "We are willing to follow the Lord." "Good. Ha!" Hearing this, Lu Bu's eyes suddenly widened. Then he raised his head to the sky and laughed wildly. At this moment, a world announcement sounded. "Ding! Lu Bu has killed Ding Yuan. Ding Yuan's status as one of the 18 vassals has automatically disappeared. Ding! Lu Bu has joined Dong Zhuo's camp." The world announcement sounded 3 times in a row and the lively world channel exploded. F*CK. F*CK. I was wondering how Ding Yuan became one of the 18 vassals. It hasn't even been a minute, and Ding Yuan has been killed by Lu Bu. Calm down, calm down. This is a game. Don't use history as a game. Chapter 1282. That's right. Besides, it's good that Ding Yuan is dead. You know, I was planning to join Dong Zhuo's camp. After all, the other marquises were the ones who lost. You mother****. You're thinking the same thing as me. I'm relieved that Dong Zhuo has Lu Bu in his camp. Mother****. So what if Dong Zhuo has Lu Bu? Don't forget that there's still Yi Yu of Gojoseon. If Yi Yu of Gojoseon joins Dong Zhuo's camp, Dong Zhuo will win. But if Yi Yu of Gojoseon joins the other marquises' camp, Dong Zhuo won't be able to do anything even if he has Lu Bu. You want to join the other marquises' camp? Go ahead. I'll go F***CKU when you do. Mother****. You think I'm afraid of you? Come on. If you don't come, you're my grandson. Stop arguing. You bunch of brainless idiots. If you want to benefit from this plot mission, you have to choose the right camp. The key is Yi Yu of Gojoseon. Mother****. You're actually telling the truth. But I feel that Yi Yu of Gojoseon won't participate. Don't forget, with Yi Yu of Gojoseon's strength, if Yi Yu of Gojoseon wants to join the other marquises' camp, he'll definitely announce it to the world. Look, did the world announcement mention Yi Yu of Gojoseon? F***CK. Your analysis is quite reasonable. If Yi Yu of Gojoseon really doesn't participate, then it'll be better for him to join Dong Zhuo's camp. Nope. Don't forget that history has records of both sides winning and losing. Don't talk nonsense. Why don't you mention the big-eared thief Liu Bei, Guan Yu, and Zhang Fei in history? Hey, bro, you reminded me. Liu Bei was killed by Yi Yu of Gojoseon. Guan Yu and Zhang Fei have become Yi Yu of Gojoseon subordinates. If Yi Yu of Gojoseon doesn't participate, then Dong Zhuo will be able to look down on all the heroes by himself. That's right. As long as Yi Yu of Gojoseon doesn't participate and joins Dong Zhuo's side, it's a sure win. The World Channel was in an uproar as it was constantly being updated. After Yi-chan took a look at it, the corners of his mouth curled up involuntarily. Without Liu, Guan, and Zhang, Dong Zhuo could rely on Lu Bu to overturn everything. However, I won't let that happen. Thinking of this, Yi-chan used his mind to lock on a Dianwei. In the next second, Yi-chan directly sent a telepathic message. Dianwei, select a veteran from the Samsara Legion. Let him teach Lu Bu a lesson when the various lords arrive at Hulao Pass, and no one can stop Lu Bu. Remember, don't kill him. Lu Bu is still somewhat useful. As soon as Yi-chan's words fell, Dianwei, who was supervising the training of the Samsara Legion's recruits on the drill ground, hurriedly bowed in the direction of the reincarnation immortal city's city lord's residence. Yes, my lord. After finishing his words, Dianwei scratched his head in confusion. Then he looked straight at the Samsara Legion's veteran. After looking for a while, Dianwei directly looked at the newly promoted lieutenant, Zhang Dainiu, and shouted. Zhang Dainiu. Hearing Dianwei's call, Zhang Dainiu hurriedly came to Dianwei and bowed. Commander, I'm here. When Dianwei heard this, he thought for a while and said, I'll give you a task. Go to Hulao Pass and wait there. After the lords have gathered at Hulao Pass and have been brutally beaten by Lu Bu, you'll take action and teach Lu Bu a lesson. Remember, don't kill him. Just defeat him. When Zhang Dainiu heard this, he scratched his head and asked in confusion, Commander, who's Lu Bu? When Dianwei heard this, he glared at Zhang Dainiu and shouted, How would I know? How would I know? You bastard, if I tell you to go, just go. When a fight starts, that kid will definitely announce his name. When he does, you'll know. Okay, I'll go now. When Zhang Dainiu heard this, he scratched his head and bowed. After finishing his words, he walked out of the drill ground. When Dianwei saw this, he directly looked at the Samsara Legion's veteran who was looking at him with envy and shouted, Don't be lazy. Continue to train. Whoever doesn't train today will not be allowed to eat. Yes, Commander. When the Samsara Legion's veteran heard this, they laughed in unison and then shouted loudly. After finishing their words, they all picked up the stone weights that weighed hundreds of kilograms and started to train. In the backyard of the city lord's residence in Reincarnation Immortal City, Yi Chun, who heard the conversation between Dianwei and the Samsara Legion's veteran on the drill ground, could not help but smile. Dianwei, this silly fellow, was really right to make him the commander of the Imperial Guards. Just as Yi Chun thought this, Yuji, who was in Yi Chun's arms, looked at Yi Chun with a puzzled expression and asked, What's the matter? Husband, do you have something important to do? Yi Chun carried Yuji to the backyard. Because of the world announcement and orders, they were delayed for a while and stood still. Otherwise, Yuji would not have asked this question. When Yi Chun heard Yuji's question, he lowered his head and kissed Yuji, then said, It's fine. It's fine. I've already dealt with it. The important thing now is to thank Madam properly. Husband. When Yuji heard this, her face immediately turned red and she buried her head in Yi Chun's arms, not daring to look at Yi Chun. When Yi Chun saw this, he laughed and walked straight into the house. Not long after, a pleasant melody rang out. It was so loud that the sun in the sky hid behind the white clouds. Luoyang, Dong Zhu's residence. Chow chow, bastard. I'm going to pull out your tendons and skin you alive. After hearing Li Ru's report, Dong Zhu's eyes suddenly widened and he roared. When Li Ru heard this, he hurriedly bowed and said, Father, don't be angry. Father-in-law, don't get angry. What you need now is a good rest. Recuperate. How can I recuperate? Those damned feudal lords. How dare they unite against me? Dong Zhu roared again when he heard this. When Li Ru heard this, he secretly glanced at Dong Zhuo and then bowed. Don't worry, father-in-law. Our Shiliang army has already stationed at the major checkpoints. Most of them are easy to defend and difficult to attack. Just now, another fierce general came to join us. With him, father-in-law can rest easy. Who? Fierce in what way? Dong Zhu was slightly taken aback and then asked Li Ru. When Li Ru heard this, he smiled faintly and then bowed. Father-in-law, this person's surname is Lu Bu, and his courtesy name is Fengxian. General Huaxiong couldn't even last 3 moves against him. This was because Lu Fengxian didn't want to hurt General Huaxiong. If it was a battlefield, General Huaxiong might have directly. When Dong Zhu heard this, his eyes suddenly widened, and then he looked straight at Li Ru. Is what you said true? Ru, I wouldn't dare lie to father-in-law. General Huaxiong really couldn't last 3 moves against Lu Bu or Lu Fengxian. Li Ru hurriedly bowed. When Dong Zhuo heard this, his eyes suddenly brightened, and then he shouted, Bring him here, quickly. Bring this person to see me. I want to take him as my foster son. Dong Zhuo's words stunned Li Ru. Li Ru didn't expect Dong Zhuo to make such a decision. If it was someone else, it would be fine, but Lu Bu wasn't someone else. After Li Ru sent people to sow discord, Lu Bu had personally killed his foster father, Ding Yuan. If Dong Zhuo took Lu Bu as his foster son, then Lu Bu would F*King kill Dong Zhuo. That would be F*King fun. Chapter 1283. As soon as Li Ru thought this, Dong Zhuo reprimanded him. What are you standing there for? Go. Yes. Father-in-law. When Li Ru heard this, he immediately regained his senses and hurriedly bowed. After he finished speaking, he walked out. Li Ru knew Dong Zhuo's personality very well. If he said something Dong Zhuo didn't like to hear when he was in the mood, Dong Zhuo would definitely flip out. Li Ru naturally didn't want to do such a thing. Before long, Li Ru brought the tall and burly Lu Bu to Dong Zhuo's room. As soon as he entered, Li Ru bowed to Dong Zhuo, who was leaning against the headboard. Father-in-law, Lu Fengxian is here. Dong Zhuo nodded and looked at Lu Bu, who had come with Li Ru. At this moment, Dong Zhuo's eyes suddenly lit up. Dong Zhuo couldn't be blamed for his reaction. It wasn't that he hadn't seen tall and sturdy people before, but it was his first time seeing someone as tall and sturdy as Lu Bu. Of course, this alone wasn't enough to shock Dong Zhuo. The problem was that Lu Bu also exuded an extremely valiant aura. No matter who saw such an existence, the first thought that popped up in their mind was that this was a super fierce general. It was for this reason that Dong Zhuo's eyes lit up when he saw Lu Bu. While Dong Zhuo was sizing up Lu Bu got down on one knee and cupped his fist. Lu Fengxian greets Dong Xianghua. Dong Zhuo snapped out his daze and shouted, "What a fine fellow! What a good Lu Fengxian! From now on, you are my adopted son. How about it?" When Lu Bu heard this, he was stunned. Li Ru had never said this to him before. Otherwise, he wouldn't be stunned. While Lu Bu was stunned, Li Ru suddenly said, "Fengxian, don't worry. The Prime Minister won't be like Ding Yuan. He won't be afraid of you because of your talent. As long as Fengxian is loyal and talented, the Prime Minister will definitely put you in an important position." Dong Zhuo was stunned by Li Ru's words. When he recovered, he laughed and shouted, "Fengxian, my adopted son. Fengxian, my son. As long as you are willing to acknowledge me as your adoptive father, I will give you enough trust and an important position." Dong Zhuo didn't hear Li Ru say that Lu Bu killed Ding Yuan, but he wasn't stupid. He could naturally analyze the hidden meaning in Li Ru's words. It was precisely because Dong Zhuo had analyzed the meaning behind Li Ru's words that he spoke to Lu Bu in such a manner. As soon as Dong Zhuo's words fell, Lu Bu's eyes widened. He knelt on the ground and bowed loudly. "Godfather, please accept a bow from your child." After Lu Bu finished speaking, he kowtowed 3 times with his head on the ground. When Dong Zhuo saw this, he laughed and said, "Fengxian, my son, please rise." "Yes, Godfather." When Lu Bu heard this, he nodded his head heavily. Then, he bowed and said in a loud voice. After that, he stood up. Dong Zhuo glanced at Lu Bu and then laughed wildly. "Fengxian, my son alone can stop an army of 1,000,000. What can those damned vassals do to me? Godfather, your child is willing to go to Hulao Pass and stop the vassals for you." Lu Bu's eyes widened and he shouted. When Dong Zhuo heard this, he laughed heartily and shouted, "Good. Reincarnation Immortal City, City Lord Mansion, Rear Residence." After sending Yuji to the clouds dozens of times, Yi Chun took her to take a bath and accompanied her for a while. Then, he began to refine the innate spiritual treasure in her room again. Yuji was slightly taken aback when she saw Yi Chun sitting cross-legged. She asked, "Husband, should I leave first?" When Yi Chun heard this, he couldn't help but smile and say, "No need. My wife can just lie here. Your husband is not afraid of being disturbed." When Yi Chun refined the innate spiritual treasure, he used the enlightenment stones and innate merit. Even if someone disturbed Yi Chun, it wouldn't affect Yi Chun in the slightest. Otherwise, Yi Chun wouldn't have said this. When Yuji heard this, she heaved a sigh of relief and said, "I'm fine. If that's the case, then I'm relieved." When Yi Chun heard this, he couldn't help but feel a warmth in his heart. "My wife, you must be tired. Rest first." Yichen had tormented Yuji quite a bit earlier. Otherwise, Yichen wouldn't have said this. When Yichen said this, Yuji's face immediately reddened. Then, she replied softly, "Yes. Yes." When Yichen saw this, he couldn't help but smile. Then, with a thought, 10,000 enlightenment stones appeared in front of Yichen in an instant. Looking at the 10,000 enlightenment stones floating in front of him, Yichen chose to use them without hesitation. Ding! Congratulations to player Yichen for successfully using the enlightenment stones. Enlightenment mode has been activated. Duration: 10,000 minutes. When the system's notification ended, the heavenly book that Yichen had obtained a long time ago appeared in front of Yichen. Looking at the heavenly book floating in front of him, Yichen couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. If I hadn't appeared, the heavenly book would have fallen into the hands of the primeval Lord of Heaven and become the investiture of the gods today. I'll refine the heavenly book and make it the imperial edict of the Samsara Empire. At the thought of this, Yichen immediately connected with a massive amount of innate merit points in his body. In the next second, Yichen extracted 1 billion innate merit points from a massive amount of innate merit points in his body and injected them directly into the heavenly book. With a buzzing sound, the originally ordinary heavenly book opened up instantly and released thousands of rays of golden light. At the same time, a mysterious and indescribable aura appeared from Yichen's body with a boom, and then it directly exploded. Looking at the heavenly book that was floating in midair and trembling constantly, Yichen smiled and entered the refining mode. Time passed slowly. The mysterious aura emitted from Yichen's body became stronger and stronger. After 2 hours, the mysterious aura emitted from Yichen's body reached its peak. At this moment, the heavenly book that was shining with thousands of rays of golden light suddenly shook. At the same time, Yichen opened his eyes. Ding! Congratulations to player Yichen for successfully refining the innate cardinal treasure, heavenly book. When the system's notification ended, Yichen's eyes opened wide. Finally, the refining of the heavenly book was completed. At the thought of this, Yichen looked at the heavenly book and gave it a thought. With a buzzing sound, the heavenly book that looked normal suddenly twisted. In the blink of an eye, it turned into an imperial edict that was golden in color and emitted a strong imperial aura. Looking at the heavenly book that had completely changed its appearance, Yichen couldn't help but smile. The imperial sword and imperial edict were completed. Next, the imperial jade seal. Chapter 1284. Yichen walked the path of the Emperor of Providence and was destined to build a dynasty of Providence. In order to do this, apart from building a country, he had to have 3 major items of a dynasty of Providence: the sword of the Emperor, the imperial decree, and the imperial jade seal. Among them, the sword of the Emperor and the imperial decree had already been refined by Yichen. As long as Yichen completed the imperial jade seal, the 3 major items of the reincarnation empire that Yichen was about to establish would be completed. At that time, Yichen only needed to unify the world and then directly advance his reincarnation empire to a dynasty of Providence before ascending to the primordial world. Thinking of this, Yichen waved his right hand and the connate cardinal treasure, the exquisite 9 orifices stone, appeared instantly. Looking at the exquisite 9 orifices stone floating in front of him, Yichen used his mind, and the exquisite 9 orifices stone, which was originally in the state of a stone, instantly melted. In the blink of an eye, it turned into a square imperial jade seal. Its appearance was simple, but to become a true imperial jade seal, it required enough providence. He would refine it first and inject the providence of heaven and earth into it after unifying the world. Thinking of this, Yichen used his mind and instantly connected to the massive amount of connate merit in his body. In the next second, Yi Chun directly extracted 1 billion connate merit from the massive amount of connate merit in his body and injected it into the exquisite 9 orifices stone. At this moment, the originally ordinary exquisite 9 orifices stone suddenly shook and let out a dragon roar that shook the world. Roar! When Yi Chun heard this, he could not help but smile. The exquisite 9 orifices stone was the exquisite 9 orifices stone. It was born with a dragon's soul. The exquisite 9 orifices stone was born and nurtured by the heavens. It would grow every million years, and it would not increase or decrease. It would take hundreds of millions of years to form one orifice. When the 9 orifices were completed, it had endless magical uses. Its function was to seize the fortune of heaven and earth, suppress the providence of heaven and earth, proclaim the majesty of the emperor's Tao, and deter all the demons in the world. It could be said that the exquisite 9 orifices stone was the best material to make the imperial jade seal, and the dragon soul was one of its characteristics. Otherwise, Yi Chun would not be so happy. Begin refining. Thinking of this, Yi Chun closed his eyes and entered the refining state. At this moment, an extremely mysterious fluctuation appeared from Yi Chun's body and exploded. With a buzzing sound, the imperial jade seal, formed by the 9 orifices exquisite stone that was floating in front of Yi Chun, suddenly began to spin. At the same time, the sound of the great Tao echoed in the sky. Chenlu County, 30 li west of Xuanzhou County, the location of the 18 Vassal Alliance meeting. Everyone, a snake can't move without a head, and a bird can't fly without wings. As such, I believe that we should nominate someone to be the leader of our alliance. This way, we can unite as one and suppress the traitor Dong Zhuo together. Ji Province's magistrate Han Fu glanced at the various feudal lords present before speaking. When the provincial governor of Gun Province, Lu Dai, heard this, he nodded his head in approval. Han Jizhou is right. Dai also has the same view. Agreed. It's feasible. This method is excellent. After the 18 feudal lords finished speaking one after another, Yuan Shao stood up and said, "Let's not waste any more time. Everyone, is there anyone who wants to recommend themselves? Why don't you stand up and speak?" When Yuan Shao finished speaking, the feudal lords all looked at each other, but no one spoke. When Yuan Shao saw this, he could not help but smile. At this moment, Haniai County's Governor Wang Quang suddenly spoke. "In my opinion, the governor of the Eastern County, Brother Qiao Mao, can be the leader." When Wang Quang finished speaking, Yuan Shao immediately frowned. At this moment, Qiao Mao stood up and clasped his fist. "Thank you for your praise, Brother Wang. However, I'm already old. I should nominate someone younger and more capable. I think that Qiao Mend is suitable. He is young and dared to assassinate Dong Zhuolong. Although he did not succeed, he is still a loyal person of the Great Han Dynasty," Shandong Prefecture's Governor Zhang Yang suddenly said. When Shandong Prefecture's Governor Zhang Yang finished speaking, Cao Cao hurriedly stood up and spoke. No. In terms of intelligence and ability, Cao Cao is not as good as Yuan Shao or Yuan Benshu. Therefore, Cao Cao believes that the Bohai Prefecture's governor, Yuan Benshu, should be the leader. When Cao Cao finished speaking, Yuan Shao's face, which had been turning uglier and uglier, suddenly revealed a smile. Brother Mend is too kind. How can Shao take on such a heavy responsibility? When Yuan Shao finished speaking, Pengcheng's governor Tao Qian laughed and spoke. Commandant Chao and Yuan Benshu are both outstanding talents of the Great Han Dynasty. Anyone can be the leader, but in my opinion, Yuan Benshu is the most suitable. When Pengcheng's governor Tao Qian said this, he glanced at the feudal lords and continued. Everyone, don't forget that the traitor Dong Zhuo killed no less than 300 people of the Yuan clan. He even hung Yuan Kuei, Grand Tutor Yuan, on the city wall of Luoyang. How can Yuan Benshu not take revenge for such a huge grudge? As soon as Tao Qian's words fell, Yuan Shao's eyes blazed with boundless fury. At the same time, the feudal lords all looked at Yuan Shao and clasped their fists. We respectfully invite the alliance leader to take the seat of honor. When Yuan Shao heard this, he took a deep breath and exhaled deeply. Then, he walked to the alliance leader's seat that had been prepared beforehand. He turned around and looked at the feudal lords. Since everyone has recommended this Yuan Shao will not refuse. However, before I take the alliance leader's seat, this Yuan Shao has something to say. When the feudal lords heard this, they all listened attentively. When Yuan Shao saw this, he unsheathed the sword at his waist and shouted, "Kill Dongjua! Kill Dongjua!" When Xiao Chao heard this, he suddenly stood up and shouted, "Kill Dongjua!" When the other feudal lords heard this, they looked at each other and shouted together, "Kill Dongjua! Kill Dongjua!" When Yuan Shao heard this, he nodded seriously and sat down on the alliance leader's seat. Hulao Pass. General, not only did Xiongwu take Lu Bu as his adopted son, but he also let Lu Bu personally oversee Hulao Pass. This, Hua Xiong's personal guard said after glancing at Hua Xiong. When Hua Xiong heard this, he narrowed his eyes. However, he quickly regained his composure. Lu Bu, Lu Fengxian, is unparalleled in martial arts. My lord choosing him to oversee Hulao Pass is the best plan. But, General, Hulao Pass originally belonged to you. Now that Lu Bu is here, he wants to take over your position. When Hua Xiong's personal guard heard this, he said unwillingly. When Hua Xiong heard this, he patted his personal guard's shoulder and asked, "Do all you inhumans sow discord like this?" When Hua Xiong's personal guard heard this, his eyes narrowed and he asked, "General, what do you mean by this?" Chapter 1285. Hua Xiong glanced at his personal guard and said, "Stop pretending. Stop pretending. Tell me, what do you want from me?" "I don't understand what you mean, General." Hua Xiong's personal guard's expression changed, and he replied, "Still pretending?" Hua Xiong narrowed his eyes and threw a punch at his personal guard's stomach. Hua Xiong's personal guard's eyes narrowed, and he blocked the punch. Bam! Hua Xiong's fist landed on the personal guard's hands. Interesting. Hua Xiong was slightly taken aback when he saw that his attack had been blocked. He then opened his mouth to speak. Hua Xiong's personal guard let out a long sigh and said, "General Hua, how about we make a deal? You're not going to hide anymore." Hua Xiong glanced at the man who pretended to be his personal guard, but was actually a player and asked. The player who pretended to be Hua Xiong's personal guard smiled and said, "General Hua recognized me. Since General Hua recognized my identity and didn't kill me, it would be meaningless if I continue to hide." Hua Xiong nodded and said, "Tell me, what kind of deal do you want to make?" The player who pretended to be Hua Xiong's personal guard glanced at Hua Xiong and said, "General Hua, help us take down Lu Bu, and we'll help you replace Dong Zhuo as the overlord. What do you think?" Hua Xiong narrowed his eyes and said in a deep voice, "What? You want me to betray my lord?" The player who pretended to be Hua Xiong's personal guard hurriedly said, "General Hua, don't be angry. This isn't betrayal. Dong Zhuo has gone against the law and burned the young emperor, the young empress, and the empress dowager to death. Everyone has the right to punish him. If General Hua is willing to stand out and eliminate the rebels, you'll be praised by the world. By then, your prestige, reputation, and the hearts of the people will be at your fingertips. It's not impossible for General Hua to ascend the throne during the holidays." Hua Xiong narrowed his eyes and shouted, "Humph, you're better off saying it than singing. Do you know that Lu Fengxian is unparalleled in bravery? There are very few people in the world who can fight against him." When the player disguised as Hua Xiong's personal guard heard this, he couldn't help but laugh. "General Hua, you've overlooked one thing. We, mutants, are immortal, and most of us are not much weaker than emperor-level generals. Even if Lu Bu is peerless in the world, he won't be able to do anything in front of us. If that's the case, why do you want Lu Fengxian?" Hua Xiong asked with a cold smile. The player who pretended to be Hua Xiong's personal guard was silent for a moment when he heard this. "General Hua, this is not something you should know. However, I can tell you that as long as General Hua agrees to my conditions, we will help General Hua achieve hegemony. What do you think?" Ignorant brat. Do you think I'm a 3-year-old kid? Hua Xiong's eyes widened as he roared. The expression of the player disguised as Hua Xiong's personal guard changed when he heard this. At this moment, Hua Xiong spoke. The deal can be done, but the content has to be changed. General Hua, please speak, the player disguised as Hua Xiong's personal guard said after a brief pause. Hua Xiong glanced at the player and said, kill all of the 18 marquises. All of you, kill all of those 18 warlords. As long as you succeed, I will cooperate with you and capture Lu Bu. General Hua, are you joking? The player disguised as Hua Xiong's personal guard asked in a low voice. Hua Xiong sneered and said, I'm not joking. Do I look like I'm joking? Hua Xiong, I gave you a clear path, but you didn't take it. You insisted on following Dong Zhuo to the end. You're courting death. Don't blame me. The player disguised as Hua Xiong's personal guard shouted. Ignorant brat, how dare you threaten me? Hua Xiong's eyes widened and he roared. As soon as Hua Xiong finished speaking, an extremely powerful aura appeared from his body and locked onto the player who was pretending to be a guard. Damn it! The player disguised as Hua Xiong's personal guard grimaced. He raised his right hand and an earth-rank sword appeared in his hand. Hua Xiong's face darkened when he saw the earth-rank sword in the player's hand. In the next second, Hua Xiong roared, Damn you! You actually have an earth-rank weapon, but it's useless. Today, I'll show you why Inhumans are trash in front of us generals. As soon as Hua Xiong finished speaking, a violent aura burst out with a boom. At the same time, Hua Xiong clenched his right hand into a fist and punched the player disguised as his personal guard. It's not up to you to decide whether it's useful or not. The player disguised as his personal guard narrowed his eyes and slashed the sword in his right hand at Hua Xiong. Clang! The long sword in the hands of the player who had disguised himself as a personal guard slashed at Hua Xiong's armor as he tried to dodge the attack. At the same time, Hua Xiong's right fist struck the player's head. Then, the player's head exploded like a watermelon. Red and white matter splattered everywhere. Looking at the dead player, Hua Xiong smiled coldly. At this moment, the white light of resurrection appeared on the player's corpse. Then, the player appeared on the spot, unharmed. Hua Xiong's eyes narrowed when he saw this. At this moment, the fully resurrected player's angry voice suddenly rang out. Hua Xiong, you F***er, you wasted my cross of resurrection. Since you're not willing to hand Lu Bu over to us, then die. Hua Xiong's eyes narrowed when he heard this. At this moment, a thick heavenly halberd suddenly pierced through the door. Pucci, the heavenly halberd pierced through the player who had just been resurrected. Lu Bu, the player disguised as Hua Xiong's personal guard lowered his head and looked at the heavenly halberd that had pierced through his body. Bang! The player who had just said Lu Bu's name exploded in an instant. At the same time, Lu Bu pushed open the door and appeared here. Hua Xiong greets the general. Hua Xiong saw this and hurriedly stepped forward and bowed. Lu Bu looked at Hua Xiong and said, You can't be trusted. Mutants can't be trusted. If you see them, kill them. Yes, General. Hua Xiong didn't dare to delay and hurriedly bowed. In the west of Luoyang, in a remote village, the light of resurrection suddenly lit up. In the next second, angry shouts and curses rang out. Son of a bitch, the plan failed. Hua Xiong didn't agree at all, and Lu Bu also appeared. If it failed, then it failed. It's nothing. There's still a chance. After saying this, they saw Lu Yu, who originally didn't belong to the 18 feudal lords but had now become one of them, walk out of a house. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.